Okay, thanks everyone. Should be a good show today. I'm trying to be more consistent, putting out way more material. I got some people that are supporting me on Patreon. I'm someone who takes that seriously. So the more people that support me, the more I'm going to try to be consistently putting material out there. So I got 10 areas of discussion today. Not sure the area I wanted to go in. Let me just say as a preview, I think that if you've been coming to my channel lately, maybe it seems like I'm a one-trick pony and all I know to talk about is kind of the corruption that's going on with the impeachment coup, with the Russia collusion hoax and all of that stuff. But in reality, I have a lot more to talk about than just that. It's just that I find at this time, that's the biggest story in the country, and that's the most important thing going on in the country. So that's why I spend a lot of time discussing that. But I assure you we're going to be discussing some other things today, if I'm not too wordy on the first topic. So where I wanted to start today was just some periphery stuff when it comes to the Russia investigation and things of that nature. As always, if there's any problems with the audio or the video quality, please let me know and I'll try to adjust on the fly. So I thank you for that, but I think I've worked out my audio issues for now. So let's get started. One of the things I was just tweeting about was someone put up, I think his name was John Jackson on Twitter, kind of a point that I talk about a lot, and I was impressed to see someone talk about this, which is the idea of, I'm sick and tired of hearing the Democrats and the media and the bureaucrats, that, such as those that testified in the impeachment hearing, discuss how, if we say things that are critical of Obama or critical of the Democrats or critical of the intel agency, anything we say that shows corruption from the establishment, they claim that's Putin's talking points. I remember at one point them saying, discussing the lies that Nunez told about FISA abuses. That was Putin's talking points. That was helping Russia. Because remember, more than Russia wanted Trump to win, they want to cause division within the country. And so anytime Trump discusses the FBI being corrupt or discusses Ukrainian election interference or the Bidens, supposedly that's Putin's talking points and that's helping Russia. I'm sick and tired of this lie. Like, it's so blatant that this is just used as a catch-all to stop any criticism whatsoever of the media, of the intel agencies, and of the Democrats, aka the deep state or the establishment. Now, I know people make fun of me for saying that, some people. Hey, what's up, Matt? Yeah, I hear you. I'll leave it to other people to dig deeper into symbolic stuff. I think that a lot of people need to understand the corruption that we see in our face when it comes to the political realm and how that influences us in our personal lives. But I digress. Thanks for joining anyways. I really appreciate it. So we hear this lie spread over and over, and it's just to stop criticism of them. But if, again, as always, the very thing that the Democrats and the media and the intel agency are accusing others of, and this isn't just Trump they're accusing people like me that talk about this, they're accusing people like you that might have problems with Ukrainian election interference, might have problems with FBI abuse, spying on a political candidate, and things like that. Is that they're, again, as always, hypocritical and accusing you of what they themselves do. So I ask people this all the time, particularly those that are, for the, think that Trump's a really bad guy and should be removed from office, or believe that the Mueller report somehow was damning of Trump. I say, what was the biggest Russian influence into our election system? What was the example? Mueller outlined two things. He said, one, the Russian trolls, which is a joke, as I've showed a million times. We now know a judge says those weren't even ordered by Putin. They just happened to be Russian people posting memes. Second, there was the supposed Russian hack of the DNC and Podestas, which I no longer believe. That could have happened. I don't know. I don't trust the FBI because I think they're corrupt. Or if I believe the Democrats' talking points, they're so corrupt they didn't understand they're not supposed to alter evidence to say the opposite of what it does, like they did in their efforts to spy on Carter Page. So, sorry, I don't believe it. But even if we accept that that's the case, they did hack the DNC and they released those emails. Most of that is over and done with. We don't really talk. We talk about the hack in the sense of going after Trump or in the sense of going after Russians. But the actual details that were released by WikiLeaks, most people, it's out of the mainstream narrative. It's done. Yet there was one Kremlin-sourced influence that to this day is still affecting us. And that is the Kremlin agents that were the source for the Steele dossier. Now, we've known this. We've known since 2017. I wrote about this in 2017. Not only was Christopher Steele a foreign spy, but his sources were Kremlin officials close to Putin. His own words. Now we know through both the Mueller report and the IG report that the claims in the Steele dossier of people connected to Trump conspiring with Russians to affect the election were all lies. It was garbage. Yet that Russian disinformation was so significant, not only do people still believe to this day, large amounts of people in this country, Maxine Waters just said it again the other day, that Trump's a Russian stooge. Trump's under the thumb of Vladimir Putin. Millions of Democrats believe that. But we actually used that disinformation sourced by Kremlin officials to spy on Trump's campaign through the FBI. Now, there isn't a more significant effect on our system from Russian disinformation than that. This isn't my theory. This is the Democrats' theory. This is the media's theory. This is Bob Mueller's theory. They're the ones who all say, yes, this was Kremlin info. This came from Kremlin sources. We know from the IG and Mueller that it was garbage. The Steele dossier was garbage. Yet to this day, it's affecting our country, causing division. Now, I'm not going to listen to the same people in the media and in the Democratic Party and in the intel agencies that told us, oh, we have to believe this every day. Top story for 3 years. We had to have investigations. We had to spy on Trump's team. We had to have a special counsel. All based on this Kremlin disinformation. Now they're telling us, oh, when you talk about the FBI, you're spreading Putin's message. You're creating the division that he wants. Oh, when you talk about Ukrainian corruption or the Bidens, you're spreading Putin's message. The same people. Because remember, this isn't right. This isn't my theory. This is their theory. The Kremlin wants to cause division in this country. It wants people to be distrusting of our elected officials and our political system. That's what everyone says, right? Republicans and Democrats alike. That's what media on all sides says. What better way to do that than to spread this disinformation from Kremlin officials, directly from Kremlin officials, every day for 3 years? And now they have the nerve to tell you, how dare you want to look into corruption that could have affected Hillary, could have helped her? How dare you look into corruption that could have affected the Bidens? How dare you look into corruption that could be affecting the FBI or the media? That helps Putin. That's Putin's talking points. So much so that they're actually telling you with a straight face. Okay, that might be hyperbolic to say almost every single Democrat in the Senate that questioned the IG Horowitz brought up the point. Nothing in this discredits from the idea that Russia interfered in the election, correct? Horowitz would be like, yes, that's true. Almost every Democrat, at least in Schiff's hearings, impeachment hearings that I saw, the Intel Committee's hearings, almost every single Democrat and their witnesses said, oh, Rudy Giuliani talking about Ukrainian election interference or Burisma or Hunter Biden's connection to it, that's all Putin's talking points. We know that it was Russia that interfered in the election, not Ukraine. They're lying so much. They're projecting so much that they're literally telling you, they want you to believe only one country could have interfered. That's their claim. So at the same time, they spread Kremlin-sourced disinformation for 3 years that led to rallies against Trump, people calling for the White House to be burned down, people calling for Trump to be killed, people calling for Trump to be tried for treason, led to an actual special counsel, led to actual spying on Trump's campaign, was the top story in this country for 3 years. And they have no self-reflection. They're not like, oh, we're sorry, we spread Kremlin disinformation. They never once said it. Not once did it cross their mind. They knew it was sourced from Kremlin officials, but they hated Trump, so it was okay. Now they want you to believe, oh, but if you question us, or if you question the intel agency, or if you question Biden, that's spreading Putin's talking points. That's nonsense. It's ridiculous, and more people should be calling it out. The Republicans don't call this out enough. They should have looked at Fiona Hill when she was saying that. Yes, that's right. This is exactly what Putin wants. Didn't Putin also want you and your friends to spread the lie that Trump was under his thumb for 3 years to weaken America? Didn't Putin want that as well? Oh, but that was okay, right? Because Orange Man bad, so that was okay. Just to give you an idea of who these people are, and I saw that on Twitter, so I wanted to talk about that. The next thing that's kind of periphery to that is there are now reports coming out that Joseph Mifsud may be dead. I don't know if I believe this. With stuff like this, it's like the Epstein thing. Like the story about Epstein's so incredible, it's so obvious a lie. Who knows if he's dead? I don't know. And before, like, what I think's funny is, look, I don't really go deep into a lot of conspiracy theories. But I also don't make fun of people that do. You want to know why? You want to know what the most ridiculous conspiracy theory is? Here's a conspiracy theory for you. That Epstein tried to kill himself, and then he was taken out of suicide watch a week later. There were no cameras on his cell. The footage of him trying to kill himself for the first time disappeared. The jailers that were supposed to be watching his cell both fell asleep. The cameras outside of his cell both malfunctioned. And he was able to kill himself after he attempted to kill himself previously, despite being the most important prisoner probably in federal custody. That's a conspiracy theory. I believe he was killed is the most logical explanation. But he may still be alive. Maybe he was smuggled out. I'm certainly not going to make fun of people that say that, because why wouldn't you believe in things like that? The last group you would believe is the FBI. Remember, the FBI, according to the Democrats, according to James Comey, who headed it, according to Chris Wray, who's the current head of the FBI, according to them, this isn't Rob Noor, this is according to them, the FBI is so incompetent, they didn't know they weren't supposed to alter evidence to say the opposite of what it says. They just didn't know. That's vindication for the FBI. That's what Chris Wray says. That's what James Comey says. That's what the Dems and all their media say. They're just grossly incompetent. That's all. So I don't blame people that are like, yeah, I'm not going to trust what the FBI says. Of course, we know the truth is they're corrupt, which also is a reason not to trust them. So with this Mifsud thing, I don't know. Maybe he's dead. Maybe he's not. Here's what I do know. Jim Jordan did an excellent job questioning Bob Mueller about this. Here's what we know. We know that Joseph Mifsud, according to Bob Mueller, according to the FBI, Joseph Mifsud is the very first person. He is literally the start of the Russia investigation. His action started it all. For those of you who don't know, there was this volunteer for the Trump campaign who I don't even think Trump ever met, named George Papadopoulos. George Papadopoulos meets this professor, Joseph Mifsud. Mifsud says, hey, I know some Russians. They got some emails on Hillary, dirt on them. Mifsud gets drunk and talks to a Hillary ally from Australia in a bar and says, yeah, the Russians say they got emails on Hillary. And that's it. That was the explanation. Now, I've talked at great length why even that version of events is insane to start an investigation into the Trump campaign. Insane. Remember, the precedent is now set. You could volunteer for the Democrats if you want, if that's what you choose. Volunteer for the Democrats. Then you go to a bar, drunk, and you say, I heard the China's got emails on the person I'm volunteering for. And that's literally all it would take for Trump to unleash the FBI, to spy on whatever Democrat it is. That's it. That's the Democrats celebrated. Oh, the precursor for the investigation was totally legit. That's what the IG found. That was the big takeaway from the media, from the IG report. Not that the FBI is incredibly corrupt or incompetent. Nope, it was, the reason for starting the investigation was good. All it takes is some drunk to say, I heard something happened, and bam, investigation. But nonetheless, Mifsud was the start of it. He's the one who told Papadopoulos this. Now, Jim Jordan asked Mueller, he's like, isn't it true that the FBI interviewed Mifsud? Yes, says Mueller. Isn't it true the FBI said Mifsud lied to them 3 times? Yes, says Mueller. Okay, so we know that people like Cohen and Flynn and Papadopoulos and others were charged with crimes for lying to the FBI or to Congress. We also know that Flynn, Papadopoulos, Cohen, none of them were accused of being a Russian, well, they were accused, but there was no evidence whatsoever that they were Russian spies or assets. Yet still, the FBI and Mueller thought those process crimes were enough to be worthy of pursuing. So why then, when you're accusing someone of being not a low-level, but a high-level Russian asset, who was the start of all of the trying to interfere in our election and trying to infiltrate the Trump campaign, and he committed 3 process crimes, why wouldn't you charge that Russian? And Mueller can't give an answer. Mueller's like, we don't talk why we charged or didn't charge people. And then Jim Jordan makes the point. He says, is it because Joseph Mifsud's Western intelligence? I can't answer that, says Bob Mueller. And probably his most lively reaction of the whole testimony. This sounds really complicated. I get it. If you don't follow this stuff thoroughly, it's a lot of names, it's a lot of confusion. I'll break it down as easily as I can, right? Regardless if you trust the FBI, you don't trust them, you trust them or you don't. The story's pretty consistent as this. Mifsud is the guy who supposedly told Papadopoulos Russians have emails on Hillary. That was literally what the FBI said started the investigation into the Trump team and to the Russia interference. So this is the guy, according to everyone, who started it all. Bob Mueller admits that guy lied to the FBI 3 times. He admits this guy was the guy who started it all. Yet for some reason, Bob Mueller decided not to charge Mifsud. Now, let me make my opponent's argument. My opponents will say, well, maybe they just didn't think Mifsud was a high enough ranking Russian intel asset to go after. But 2 things belie that. 1, he went after non-Russian assets for lying to the FBI, such as Flynn, a patriot, someone who served our armed forces. So why would you go after him harder than any Russian asset, no matter how low level they are? And secondly, he went after Russian trolls just for posting memes. And that's celebrated by the media. That's celebrated by the Democrats. The Mueller investigation, of course it was important. Look at all the Russians it got that interfered in our system. So all of a sudden, this one Russian who interfered the most, who started the whole thing, he's not worth pursuing, according to Bob Mueller? So just like with the FBI FISA abuse, we're left with only 2 explanations of what's going on. The first explanation that will be celebrated by the Democrats and the media and the intel community is that Bob Mueller is incredibly incompetent. His team was so incompetent that they left the Russian go, that they knew lied to the FBI 3 times, that they knew was the start of the entire interference campaign into our U.S. system. They let that person go because, man, they're just stupid. They're just incompetent. Once more, every single time we're talking about these intel agencies and the people within them, every single time we see these abuses come up, and the defense that's celebrated is, oh, they're just the dumbest people ever. We're told we have to trust them, everything they say. Oh, they're professionals, career men. Bob Mueller's a career man, bipartisan support. He's the kind of guy that gets things done. What an intelligent, fair-minded, great person. Just wait until his testimony. Only then we saw how intelligent was Bob Mueller. We saw him testify. He's a feeble old man. He didn't even know his own report. He was just a figurehead. They always want us to believe these two simultaneous things. These agents and these agencies are the best in the world. We have to trust what they say. They all agree on something, so if you disagree, you must be wrong. But then every time we look at the facts and they're wrong, they go, oh, they're just horribly incompetent. It's just incompetence. No corruption here. They're just the dumbest people ever. They didn't know you're not supposed to forge evidence to say the opposite of what it actually says. They didn't know. Just incompetence. They didn't know that they should charge a Russian asset who started the entire thing when he lied 3 times to the FBI. They just didn't know. They didn't know that. So that's one possible explanation, which would be troubling enough. Again, if that's how incompetent the Mueller team was, why should we trust them when they talk about things like who hacked the DNC? The other explanation is Mifsud's not who they say he is. And this is the truth. Mifsud's Western intelligence. That doesn't mean he's FBI or CIA. He might be MI5 or MI6 working for the Brits, or he might be working for the Italians. But he's Western intelligence. What does that mean? Think of the implications of this. They're now backed in a corner. The IG, Mueller, the FBI, the media, the Dems, all of them are on record. Now, they'll try to get out of this. They will. Mark my words. You heard it here first. But right now, they're all on record saying, Crossfire Hurricane opened July 31st, 2016 as a result of the Papadopoulos thing. Papadopoulos told Alexander Downer, an Australian diplomat, who, by the way, was under investigation for corruption in his role in getting, 50 million Australian tax dollars sent to the Clinton Foundation? Isn't that weird, too? How every single one of these investigations, the Trump Tower thing, Veselnitskaya, that lawyer, the Russian lawyer. Oh, she happened to be a client of Fusion GPS that was paid to start the dossier. Right? Flynn, who was interviewing him, Strzok and Page, Strzok said, I don't even think this guy committed a crime. Mueller comes in and says he was. Carter Page, that was started by DNC paid for opposition research and Christopher Steele. Every single time, it's like this goes back to the Democrats and the Clintons. Every single one of these people that needed to be investigated under Trump. All the evidence is coming from the Democrats. Or Democratic donors. Isn't that weird? Strange how that works, huh? So they're all on record saying, this was it. It wasn't the dossier. It wasn't the Trump Tower meeting. Nope. The start was July 31st, 2016. Because of Papadopoulos. Because Mifsud told Papadopoulos Russians had dirt, and Papadopoulos told Clinton ally Alexander Downer, in a drunken stupor apparently, they claim, that he was told Russians have dirt. Okay? That's the start. Now what's been celebrated, that's all, keep in mind, IG Horowitz doesn't have access to MI6. He doesn't have access to talk to foreign people. He doesn't have access to the CIA. He's just looking at the FBI. So he doesn't know what he's saying. If it's true, the story that the FBI was told, then the start was legitimate. Brief aside here. He also expresses a lot of concern and repeatedly says the reason that the opening of the investigation was legitimate is because the threshold, the bar for opening an investigation is so low. Again, don't leave, if you're one of my friends on here that don't like Trump, don't leave your hatred of Trump allow you to celebrate that. What he's saying is our FBI is allowed to spy on presidential campaigns basically, legally, and the threshold's almost non-existent. All you need to hear is a rumor. That's incredibly troubling. My Democrat friends I knew from 15 years ago that protested the Iraq war and said how corrupt the intel agencies were, they would be scared to death of that, as they should be. But now, because they don't like Trump, it's like, wow, it's okay, it's okay. Don't allow yourself to sacrifice your intelligence or your integrity just because you don't like one politician. That's ridiculous. Be stronger than that. There's plenty of reasons to dislike Trump if you want to dislike Trump. I probably disagree with many of the reasons you have, but that's fine. Reasonable people can have that argument. So imagine, there's only, again, going back to it, two explanations. Either one, Mueller and his team are incredibly incompetent and they let the Russian asset that was the start of the entire effort to interfere in our elections go, even though they knew he lied to the FBI 3 times, or he's not a Russian asset. Maybe he's a British asset. Maybe he's an Italian asset. Maybe he's a CIA asset. We don't know. IG Horowitz didn't have access to any of that information. Now, what would that mean if he was? The start of the entire Russia investigation and the Trump-Russia collusion investigation was started by Western intelligence who told a volunteer for Trump that was low level, a rumor, and then, even though we know from actual people that wore wires and talked to Papadopoulos, he said repeatedly, of course we'd never work with the Russians to get that sort of dirt. Of course not. That would be treason. While he was being spied upon and didn't know it, he's saying, of course we didn't do anything wrong. But the FBI left that out. They left that out of their big tail to continue to investigate Trump's team. Basically, this guy was told a rumor, and then he told that rumor to someone else. And they said, gotcha. That is corruption of a magnitude that you almost can't fathom. That's foreign interference, a foreign national directly spying on, infiltrating, working with Obama's intel agencies to spy on Trump's team, to spread disinformation, and to get an excuse to use the intel agencies to actually use their tools to spy on the Trump campaign, which started a 3-year narrative that to this day is still ongoing. Read the articles of impeachment. They talk about Russia. Still, this is being used. If the entire thing was started based on a lie, Western intelligence started the lie, think of what that means. I can't even come up with an analogy worse than that or simpler than that. Western intelligence says, hey, did you hear Russians did something bad? The guy's like, huh. Then he tells someone else, yeah, I heard that the Russians did something bad. Gotcha! You're a criminal! Wait, what? For just repeating what that guy said? Yep. Now Mifsud may be dead. Isn't that strange? Who would have predicted, just like the Epstein thing? So you mean this guy was central to talking to finding out how exactly did this start, and now he can't be found, just like with Epstein. So we finally get Epstein locked up, and we know he's connected to all these powerful people, so we're going to finally get a chance to interrogate him and see what's going on. Oh, and he just ends up dead. Same with Mifsud. Nothing to see here, though. Trust the FBI. They're just incredibly incompetent. They don't know you're not supposed to forge evidence to say the opposite of what it says. They don't know. Ask Comey. Ask Christopher Wray, the guy directing now. It was a big whoopsie. No big deal. They're working on fixing it. But trust them. Trust them when it comes to the Mifsud thing. Trust them when it comes to the Russian hack thing. They know what they're doing. They're the best and brightest when it comes to that. They're the dumbest and most incompetent people you could even imagine when it comes to, oops, accidentally FISA abuses. Oh, our bad. So we'll see. Hopefully Durham gets what he needs, even if he can't talk to Mifsud directly. I've said that if unverified since October 2017, I said if unverified opposition research was used by one party to spy on their opponent's campaign for presidency, it was the biggest political scandal in the history of the country. That would be dwarfed, believe it or not. And I still stand by that statement. Even with all the additional FISA abuses we now see the FBI did, that's still small compared to Western intelligence set up the Trump campaign by making up crap, telling a volunteer to their campaign, who then got drunk and told another Hillary associate, diplomat from another country, that he heard this dirt from the Western intel person. I hope everyone understands how corrupt that is. Like, it would be like an undercover cop coming up to you and you're standing outside a ball game tailgating, cooking hot dogs, right? And an undercover cop comes up to you and is like, hey man, I heard that, those guys tailgating next to you sell drugs. And you're like, huh. And so then you go up to the other people next to you on the other side of you and you're like, I heard that those guys over there sell drugs. And then they put cuffs on you and you're like, oh, you're under arrest. You're involved in drug trafficking. What are you talking about? I just heard, so some drughead told you that that those people were selling drugs? You're under arrest. And then you find out it wasn't a drughead at all. It was an undercover cop. You'd be like, wait, what? What crime did I commit again? But that's what happened. The next thing on this, and I promise I'll get to stuff not involving the Russia or the FBI. But do you understand why this is the biggest story in the country? Even more than impeachment. The FBI is the most powerful intel and investigative agency in the history of the world. They have tools that could literally invade every aspect of your life. Audio, visual. Totally destroy your Fourth Amendment rights. They have no accountability whatsoever. They are corrupt. If they could do this to the President of the United States, they could do it to you. Ruin your life. No one would believe you because the FBI is always right. Right? That's what we're told here. Even when we find out they're committing FISA abuses like they did. Still, the media, the Democrat narrative is like, the FBI is the best and brightest. They're great. They're fantastic. Don't criticize them. How dare Trump criticize them? Trump owes them an apology. What chance would you have? I don't have a lot in life. I got my friends. I got my family. Don't make a lot of money. My dogs. My one dog's not feeling good, by the way. She's on some doggy medicine. Right? But with that comes your reputation. People's trust in you. The FBI is so powerful. And their image so venerated by the media and basically everyone with a part of power in the narrative, that if the FBI accuses you of some crime, spies on you, and throws you away and throws you in jail and throws away the key, even your friends and your reputation would be tarnished so bad. Even many of your friends and family would be like, he's probably guilty. There's a reason the founding fathers thought that privacy was so important. And I know, right? One of the things that I was arguing with people about this is there are literally people out there that are like, who cares if the FBI did that? What about stop and frisk? What about the Patriot Act? Yeah, I was against the Patriot Act. And just because you're like, there are more low-level law enforcement authorities that are violating my Fourth Amendment rights, therefore I have no problem with the FBI going after Trump, that's insane. If you allow the most powerful people to do this to the most powerful people, that means there is no hope of changing anything downstream at all. Until we change the top of it, nothing would change. So if you're, for example, if you're against the Patriot Act like me, what hope is there of changing the Patriot Act when literally you're conceding, yeah, it's okay for the FBI to spy on Trump based on lies. No problem. If that's legit, then why can't we spy on Joe Schmo? They might be a terrorist after all. I mean, these excuses just dumbfound me. So a report came out that Durham, and for those of you who don't know, just to explain, the IG, the Inspector General, the IG is an office that most departments have, most agencies have, which is the Inspector General. I'm not an expert on these things, but it's kind of like internal affairs, like if you watch Law & Order or any police show, where basically all these agencies have an official within their agency that looks and makes sure that abuses aren't occurring within that agency. Right? Which would make sense. Okay? Horowitz, who is the Inspector General for the FBI, he was actually requested to start his investigations by the Democrats, believe it or not. Because they were furious with James Comey with announcing a couple days before the election they were reopening the Hillary investigation. So they said, we demand the Inspector General look into this stuff. And so then the Inspector General was like, okay, if I'm looking into Hillary and looking into the actions of James Comey and the FBI, then I'm looking into what they were doing with the Russia investigation, etc. But he's limited to only looking at the FBI. He doesn't have the power to charge people with crimes, etc. Durham is operating at the behest of Barr. Barr's the Attorney General. He runs the Department of Justice. Durham does have the power to have a grand jury, to subpoena people, to charge them with crimes. So Durham actually is the far more dangerous investigation if you're a corrupt intel official. Because no matter what, the IG could have came out, Horowitz could have came out and said, I recommend Comey for criminal prosecution, but if the DOJ doesn't accept that recommendation, it doesn't matter what the IG thought. In fact, that's exactly what happened when the IG investigated Comey leaking classified information to his friends and members of the press in order to start the Mueller investigation, which worked. But IG Horowitz said, I refer Comey for criminal prosecution. The DOJ, Barr, the Attorney General, declined. So that's who Durham is, right? He has the potential to, and he's not held to the same scope that Horowitz was. In addition to being able to issue subpoenas, have a grand jury, to compel people to testify to him or be held in contempt, he also isn't limited to just the FBI. He can investigate the CIA. He can investigate foreign nationals, which is why he was overseas talking to the Italians, talking to the UK about their role. So it's far more expansive. One of the reports coming out is that Durham is looking into Brennan's role in this entire debacle. And so for those of you that don't know, Brennan, as bad as Comey is, and Comey's terrible, Comey's clearly corrupt. He's clearly out to get Trump. And it's transparent. But at least he's somewhat sophisticated in his attempts to cover up his corruption. Brennan's not even that. Brennan was the head of the CIA. He is transparent. I mean, this is someone who said Trump's committed treason like day one. Treason. You know what the punishment for treason is? Death. That's what the former leader of the CIA has been saying about our president for years now. He testified to Congress that the Steele dossier, the CIA didn't take it serious. They didn't include it in their intelligence assessment. The CIA's, remember, the idea was that Russia was trying to infiltrate our elections. The FBI is more of a domestic investigative agency. The CIA usually does with outside threats. So the CIA did a report. They call it the Intelligence Community Assessment. They spearheaded it. And they said, basically, here's all the facts we find with kind of this outside interference. Brennan testified to Congress. The Steele dossier had nothing to do with that. He's been telling people, look, we didn't really take it seriously. And that, of course, is used by the media and the intel community to say, oh, see, the Steele dossier didn't have to do with these alleged crimes of Trump's people. There were other facts out there. Well, we now know from the IG that's not true. The only evidence they had that anyone connected to the Trump campaign was illegally conspiring with Russians to affect the election. The only evidence was the Steele dossier. They had evidence that Trump people met with Russian people. I know this might blow your mind, but that's not a crime. You're allowed to talk to Russians. I know our new McCarthyist masters, the Democrats, the media, the intel agencies, they want you to believe that you're not allowed to talk to Russians or that's somehow evidence of a crime. But it's still a free country. Hopefully it'll remain so. You're allowed to do that. So that's the only evidence they had. Now we know from the IG report, the IG says, no. Actually, the CIA did use the Steele dossier in their intelligence community assessment. What does that mean? That means Brennan lied to Congress. Now remember, Flynn got charged with lying to investigators. Still looking at going to jail for that. Cohen got charged with lying to Congress. Papadopoulos got charged with lying to investigators. Yet time and time again, we saw with the IG report on Comey leaking that information to his buddies. He showed that Comey lied to Congress. Comey said, I only gave it to one friend. Turned out he gave it to 3. We know that Clapper the former director of national intelligence, he lied to Congress when he said the NSA doesn't wittingly collect data and information on American citizens. That was a lie. We know that Brennan now lied to Congress. Why is it that if me or you lie to Congress or lie to the FBI, we go to jail? But if the intel agency people do it, Mills and Abedin, Hillary's lawyers, we know they lied to the FBI from the FBI's own notes. Mills and Abedin told Peter Strzok, who was the investigator from the FBI, they had no knowledge of Hillary Clinton's server until after her tenure as Secretary of State. Yet we've seen from released emails that's not true. They were discussing that server in 2009. Well before they claimed, they testified to the FBI. So why is it? Again, what has been my take? If you've watched me for a while, you've heard me say this a billion times. If Trump or people connected to him committed crimes, then fine. They should be held accountable. Even though I think the investigations were started by corrupt means. If it found crimes, sure, charge them. All I ask is that we have equal application of the law. So if you're going to charge one side for crimes, then you charge the other side for the same crimes. For example, Trump's campaign manager, Manafort, he probably failed to register as a foreign lobbyist. That's probably true. And for those of you who don't know, one of the things Manafort was charged with was he was working at the behest of people in the Ukraine that were pro-Russian and lobbying for them in Washington. That happens all the time. It is a problem. And there are laws on the books that say if you're lobbying on the behalf of government officials from a foreign country, you have to register so everyone knows, oh, this guy's speaking on behalf of, this Ukrainian president. But no one does. The report was devastating. It said, hear me out, it was like 2013 that Manafort and these other people were giving access to U.S. diplomats to the Ukrainians. Who was that diplomat? Oh, it was Hillary Clinton, Secretary of State. Once more we see, just like with the impeachment sham, the actual people committing the corruption, the Hillary, the pay-for-play for Hillary, or the Biden, that's okay. That's left unpunished. But looking into it, the people that facilitated it or they're looking into it, they're the ones that should be punished. I mean, this situation's a little different with Manafort. Trump was just looking into the crime. So fine, if he didn't register as a foreign lobbyist, and that law was on the books, fine, charge him. Okay. The only problem is, the Mueller indictment specifically says that working hand in hand with Manafort were two agencies, two groups. Group A and Group B. Who was Group A and Group B? Mercury LLC and the Podesta Group. Both of these are firms that specialize in lobbying. Mercury LLC more with Republicans, the Podesta Group more with Democrats. Who was Manafort of Trump? His campaign manager. Who was Hillary's campaign manager? John Podesta, who founded the Podesta Group. And it was still ran by his brother, Tony. So, okay. They all committed the same crime with the exact same people at the same time. So surely Manafort, Mercury LLC, and the Podesta Group all went down. Oh, no. Just Manafort. The Podesta Group was allowed to retroactively sign paperwork and walk away scot-free. Every single time that they've charged someone connected to Trump or accused them of a crime, they've let go someone either connected to the intel community or connected to the Hillary campaign for the exact same crime. Every single time. FARA violations, lying to the FBI, lying to Congress. Obstruction of justice. Remember when Hillary's team deleted subpoenaed evidence? I mean, it's insanity. So, why is this relevant today? Because apparently Durham's looking into Brennan. Let's see. Hopefully, if there's any justice in the world and Durham's actually legitimate, he will charge Brennan with lying to Congress. Now, again, one of the things that I never hear talked about. See, the problem is, even for us, even for people like me, like there's tons of stuff. I work 70 to 80 hours a week. I don't have time to look at everything. So some of the stuff, important documents or testimony that comes out, you're reliant on other people telling you what they were. And oftentimes that's a mistake. Even people you trust, maybe they don't see things, you know. You're thinking, hey, Rob does a decent job. You know, when I was live streaming the impeachment hearings, maybe you're thinking Rob does a decent job, but maybe not. Maybe I did okay on some things, but maybe you would have picked up things I wouldn't have. It's just not everyone has the time to be able to look through all this stuff. So IG Horowitz, so far now, he's done 3 reports. The first report was on the Hillary investigation. The second report was on Comey and leaking classified information to the media to start the special counsel. The third investigation was on the FBI and the FISA abuses. During that first IG report on the Hillary investigation, everybody wiped it away and saying, oh, there was no crimes here, there was no bias. That's not what was said. I watched that testimony of Horowitz. Horowitz said there was all sorts of things that the FBI did that was against procedure, that was totally out of character for them. And he even said specifically, on the specific instance of prioritizing the Russia investigation over the Hillary investigation, because remember, they said on Anthony Weiner's laptop, which I always chuckle setting on Weiner's laptop, they said on that for months. Here's the story you don't hear when you hear the Democrats saying, Comey cost Hillary the election. He cost her the election. Here's the story you don't hear. Why did Comey come out and say that the investigation was reopened? Well, it turns out, we now know this to be true, there was basically a whistleblower within the FBI. Anthony Weiner was dating Abedin, who was Hillary's personal assistant, basically her closest confidant. It turns out that his laptop, as they're investigating him for crazy sex crimes and basically being a creep, also contained a bunch of these emails of Hillary Clinton, many of which were classified, hundreds of thousands. He wasn't supposed to have access to any classified information. He wasn't a member of government or her team or anything like that, but he got them through his wife, Abedin. Now remember, the entire investigation in Hillary was, did she mishandle classified information? Well, here's another example. Here's someone with a computer with hundreds of thousands of these emails that he wasn't supposed to have access to, but they're on his personal computer. But the FBI did nothing. Strzok, who was in charge of this, he did nothing. They basically didn't say a word about this laptop. The investigation, we thought, into Hillary and her emails and her server was over. Well, the problem was this FBI agent started to talk to higher-ups and was like, listen, we found this computer. We found all these emails. Why aren't we investigating it? What's going on? Eventually, it got to people outside of the FBI that were involved in government, and they were like, look, something needs to happen. And so begrudgingly, James Comey had to come out and say, yeah, okay, we found this computer, it's got emails, so we're going to reopen the case. He wouldn't have had to announce it days before the election if the FBI had done their job and been looking at this information when they found it, which was a month earlier. Comey also admitted that the reason he publicly announced it was because he assumed Hillary would win, and he didn't want this being an albatross over her at the beginning of her presidency. In other words, day 3 into her presidency, oops, we found more emails, we got to reopen the investigation into Hillary's server. And that's all we'd be talking about. So he said, let's just get it out of the way now. Remember then? They reopened it and somehow they went through the same FBI that when they're responding to transparency requests, like Freedom of Information Act requests or congressional oversight, they claim it takes them, we can only go through like 100 emails a day. That's the maximum. So before you get these tens of thousands of emails that legally you want in court that you have access to, it's going to take 10 years because we can only give you 100 a day. That's what they tell people like Tom Fitton at Judicial Watch when he files Freedom of Information Act requests. That's what they told people like Devin Nunes when he was trying to get information of the FBI's misconduct with the FISA abuses. But all of a sudden, somehow, Comey and the FBI, who tried to do everything they could to ignore this laptop, all of a sudden they were able to go through hundreds of thousands of emails in 3 days, clear Hillary before the election. But that narrative is used to say, see, that proves that Comey was against Hillary. No, it doesn't. It proves he got caught because there was one good guy at the FBI who was sick and tired of them covering up. But I digress. That's just a little aside. Horowitz says that there was all sorts of, even if not criminal, very perplexing things against FBI policy that the FBI did in the Hillary investigation. Now, you don't have to be a genius to figure that out. I like to watch crime shows, like some of the ones I like to watch. I used to be in the Law and Order, not really anymore. Olivia Benson on SVU, it's just social justice crap. But like, I like that Mindhunter show on Netflix. I recommend checking out. All sorts of crime dramas I like watching. But even if you don't, you know this. What's like policing 101? You want to get the big dog, the mafia boss, or the the drug dealer, the person bringing in the drugs, or whatever. The person, you want to try to get the highest criminal you could get. Highest up whatever agent, whatever gang you're going after. And so one of the ways they always do is you get the low-level people on the street. So, if there's a big drug dealer in your town, you live in a city, and they're trying to get the drug dealer at the top. You go out in the street. You arrest the people that you can prove that are selling the drugs on the street. Then you say, we're going to charge you with these crimes, and you're going to spend 10, 15 years in jail, unless you could give us some information to get someone higher than you. Sometimes they do, and they proceed up the chain. Sometimes not, and they just throw those low-level drug dealers in jail. Right? Policing 101. Don't have to be a genius. You understand that. Oh, if you want to get someone higher up the chain, you pressure people lower down the chain for things you could prove and see if they'll flip. For some reason, the FBI in the Hillary investigation did the exact opposite. As far as I know, the first time in history of any law enforcement agency, let alone what we're told is the premier law enforcement agency in the history of the world. Instead of saying, okay, we could prove that some of these low-level people committed crimes like lying to the FBI or like destroying subpoenaed evidence. So we're going to charge them for that. And we're going to throw them in solitary confinement and tell them they're going to spend 20 years in prison unless they have information that could lead to charges of higher-up people. For some reason, the FBI, the same FBI, that they were all giving text messages about they could smell Trump supporters at Walmart and how horrible Trump was and Hillary should win $1 million. For some reason, that didn't have anything to do with it. Trust us. The bias had nothing to do with it. But for some reason, the FBI was like, you know what, let's take a different strategy this time. Here's what we'll do. We'll give everyone immunity and then ask if they want to volunteer any information on anyone higher than them. You think that makes sense in any other investigation? You get low-level drug dealer off the street. You got Sipowicz from NYPD Blue. Comes in slamming the table. All right, damn it. We know you work for this cartel. You're going down, mister. We want the goods. You tell us what's going on who's the cartel leader? Where do the drugs come from? What time are the shipment? Who's your contact? And the guy goes, oh, man. I have a family. How many years am I going to spend in prison? Oh, none. We've given you total immunity. So you don't have to say a word. You have total immunity. But would you like to rat out your cartel boss? No. Okay, sir. Well, hey, here, we got that evidence of your crime. We've destroyed it. We destroyed all your cell phone and computer showing that you committed crime. So you're good to go. You're on your way. Thanks a lot. And then the police proudly announced, no drug problem in this town. There's nothing to it. We gave everyone immunity, and everyone decided not to flip on anyone. So that proves it. No crime. That's what the FBI did. They gave Mills immunity. They gave Abedin immunity. So now we know they lied. Well, no big deal. Nothing you can do. Paul Combetta, the IT guy who deleted the subpoenaed evidence, they gave him immunity. So is it any wonder none of them flipped? And then they say, oh, we don't know what Hillary's intent was, which they added into the crime. You didn't need intent. Well, maybe you could have found evidence of her guilt had you charged the lower level people you knew committed crimes. But instead you gave them immunity and you destroyed all their devices so that we couldn't see the evidence of their crimes. That's what happened. No one talks about it. They just say, oh, the IG said that there was no bias. That investigation was okay. No, he didn't. That's not what he said. I'm tired of it. I don't have any trust in any of these agencies. The FBI should be disbanded immediately. And by the way, did you notice they did the exact opposite with the Trump investigation? With the Trump investigation, even when the FBI said, we didn't think that Flynn committed a crime, Mueller still said, charge him. The judges in the Manafort case said, we know you're not after Manafort. You're just trying to get Trump. They threw him in solitary confinement. They went after Papadopoulos. Everyone they could. They went after Cohen and got him to flip. Maybe too hard. Maybe incredibly shitty. But at least I understand that idea. We want to get the top dog. We want to find out if crimes occurred at the top level. So we're going to squeeze the people low that we think committed crimes. I think the FBI made up some of them, or Mueller did, like Flynn. But at least that process I understand. And so does everyone else. So does every Democrat. So does every media person. They get it. They know. That's why they get all excited. Remember? The media? Oh, man. Cohen flipped. Trump's lawyer Cohen flipped. That's it. That's the beginning of the end. Remember how excited they got? It's almost like they know. Trying to get lower level people to flip's the way to get to the top level people. Yet for some reason they had no problem with how the FBI went amongst the Hillary investigation, giving all the low level people immunity. No problem at all. So you know they're lying. You know they know that was corrupt. Or in their words, just incompetence, just horrible incompetence. We didn't know that if you gave everyone immunity, no one would willfully rat out their friends and employers. We just didn't know. Another whoopsie for the FBI. Get rid of them. They're garbage. So we'll see. Hopefully Durham, I'm still pessimistic. We'll see. Hopefully Barr and Durham do the right thing. They're apparently looking into Brennan. The other thing, and we know that Brennan lied to Congress. The other thing is, it also, remember, the IG only looked at the FBI. So we want to see exactly what the CIA was doing to facilitate this investigation into Trump's team. So apparently he's getting access to emails, phone records, all sorts of other things like that. My contention is, even though it's terrible, I think the treatment that should come to Comey and Brennan and the Democrats like Schiff and the people connected to Hillary's campaign, Christopher Steele, he's a foreign national, so that's different. But Bruce Orr, Nellie Orr, how about we raid their house and their lawyers' houses in the middle of the night? Then we charge them with any crime, even if it has nothing to do with what we're talking about the Russia investigation. Maybe they committed some tax crime in 2010. Fine, let's get them for that. In fact, why don't we raid every politician's house and all of their lawyers? Why don't we do that to Nancy Pelosi? Why don't we do it to Dianne Feinstein and Chuck Schumer? Bet we find crimes. Let's do it to the media that cheered it on. They cheered when CNN was waiting to see Roger Stone brought out with a bunch of FBI agents with guns pointed at him in the middle of the night. They thought that was great. That was great riveting television. Let's do that to Jake Tapper, to Rachel Maddow. Who cares if it's justified, right? That's their argument. As long as we find evidence of some sort of crime, that's all that matters. We're constantly told, oh, the Mueller investigation was great. Look at all the crimes it found. Yeah, but none that they were apparently looking for. They didn't find one person guilty of illegally conspiring with Russia. Not one. Well, still they found crimes. Yeah, I bet if you raid any of those people I just said's lawyer's office in the middle of the night, you'll probably find crimes on 95% of them. So I hope that Durham and Barr do the right thing. Let's start by throwing Brennan in jail in solitary confinement, raiding his lawyer's office in the middle of the night, throwing away the key like they did to Manafort. What's up, WZ? Let's start with that because we know he lied to Congress. Let's start there. Right? And then as Trump supporters, we could just do what the Trump haters do, right? Oh, someone was arrested. They were charged with a crime. That's it. That legitimizes everything. That proves that the CIA's and everyone's corrupt in it, right? That's what they do with Trump. Oh, man, if Trump's so innocent, then what about Manafort, huh? Manafort got charged with the crime. That just shows how dirty Trump is. Okay. That's the game you want to play. It ought to be totally different. We already see it in the FBI. That Kleinsmith lawyer that changed the email to make it look like Carter Page wasn't an asset for the CIA. What are they saying? Oh, he was just low level. Oh, no big deal. Even now, everybody at the FBI that was working on that case knew Carter Page was a CIA asset, and they saw that email that Kleinsmith altered, and they didn't say a word. But it was just one bad apple. So, I hope Brennan goes down. He's one of the most, even, it's hard to say this, it's hard to pick, but he may be more insufferable than Comey, believe it or not. And then who knows, maybe if we lock Brennan up and throw away the key and bankrupt him in court, like they did to Flynn and Cohen and Papadopoulos and Carter Page, maybe if we do that type of stuff, maybe he'll flip on someone. Maybe not, who knows? But hey, that's the way the system's done, right? That's what the Democrats and the media have cheered for. That's what the intel agencies and people like John Brennan have cheered for. Maybe we should be wiretapping them. Maybe there should be a FISA warrant out against John Brennan right now. That's what they wanted, right? I'm still against that. I still want justice. I don't want people spied on illegally. I don't want a legal system that just says, we don't care if you're innocent or guilty, we'll bankrupt you and ruin your life. Even for someone like John Brennan, I don't want that. But if there's any karma in the world, that's what would happen, and it would be me defending John Brennan. And all these scumbags in the media and in the intel agencies, and they'd say, well, you can't do this. This man, he served this country. You can't do that to him. That's terrible. That's so unfair. Oh my goodness, Trump's a tyrant. Barr and Durham, they're tyrants. They're abusing the system. Isn't that exactly what you cheered for with Flynn and Page and Papadopoulos and the Trump campaign? Isn't that the exact same thing you cheered for? Yeah, but that's different. Orange man bad. You can't do that to our side. Come on now. Point number 6. Oh, real briefly on that. I guess I'm only on point 5 of 10. Remember during the Mueller investigation, this is the type of stuff that infuriates me. I don't care even if you think Trump should be impeached, or if you thought he was guilty of colluding with Russians. I strongly disagree. I really do. But as long as you're not a hypocrite, if you say, hey, quid pro quo to a foreign country for foreign aid, that's impeachable. And yeah, Biden should have been impeached as well for that, and Obama. Okay. I disagree, but at least you're consistent. One of the things that infuriates me is when people are either hypocrites or they make nonsensical points. Now, even the nonsensical point I could deal with, but when it becomes part of the mainstream narrative and it's so silly that all it takes is any reasonably objective person to think about it critically for 10 seconds to realize the stupidity of it. Let me give you an example. This claim that's been repeated over and over and over and over again by all the damn witnesses for the impeachment and their media and the damn politicians themselves. We know it was Russia that interfered in the election, not Ukraine. Well, just because one country interfered doesn't mean another country couldn't. Yet, you don't have to be smart to realize that. That's common sense. We know that it wasn't Rob that broke into that house because Larry broke into the house. Well, yeah, but we have evidence. We have video that Rob was there. Was Larry there? Yeah, Larry was there. Then Rob couldn't have been. So wait, you're arguing two people couldn't have broken into the house? That's exactly right. If Larry was there, Rob couldn't have been. How stupid is that? But that's the type of stuff. If you want to have a conversation with a lot of these Trump haters, you have to wade through this garbage. It's like you're talking to a 3-year-old. You have to be like, yeah, two countries can interfere at the same time. Let me explain it to you. Or here's another one. Russian trolls stole the election. An election that had more money spent than any election in history. $500 billion. That's $500 billion. 2/3 of that by Hillary's team. That doesn't even include free press, that 90-something% of the media that was all in the bag for Hillary. All of that was overwhelmed by $50,000 to $500,000 being spent by some trolls in Russia, posting some memes on Facebook, most of which weren't seen till after the election, many of which were for things that were seemingly against Trump, like Black Lives Matter or LGBT rights, many of which after the election were directed at starting rallies, which they did, against Trump. But we still have to pretend. We have to pretend. That is a big deal. These trolls are a big deal. I'm talking to smart friends of mine that are on the left, like, dude, don't say this. You sound like an idiot. Really? This is a hill you're going to die on? One of my friends that I'm talking to is a big proponent of Black Lives Matter. So at the time, in like 2017, I'm arguing with, and he's a smart guy too. Democrat, very smart guy though. Someone who I'm not ashamed to admit, one of my favorite people to talk to. And in some issues, I was like, wow, okay, I see your point in this. And so I'm trying to explain to him, like, dude, like, you don't realize that you saying this was a big deal. It's only a hop, skip, and a jump away. You who supports Black Lives Matter, for someone to come along and say, yeah, and the Russians supported Black Lives Matter. So that proves that the entire Black Lives Matter thing's a sham. You don't see how that's the next predictable thing to come down the pipe? LGBT. These Russian trolls promoted LGBT. Oh, that proves the LGBT. We should be very skeptical of the LGBT movement. Do you see the stupidity here? No! 12 Russian trolls didn't even have a blip on the screen of affecting the election. Period. At all. And it's stupid that we even have to pretend such. There were meetings in Capitol Hill. It was a big media story for months. How can we stop fake news online? Oh, fake news online. Meanwhile, as always, the very people making those claims, the mainstream media, are pushing the fake Russia collusion narrative for 3 years, which actually does have an effect. For years we've been told, certainly the election of Trump has accelerated and accentuated the corruption from the media, that they're not journalists. But we've known for years that they have an establishment bias, particularly towards the Democrats. Republicans have complained about that for years. And what has the Democrats said? Suck it up. Who cares? You can still win elections. It's not a big deal. So this conglomerate, this enormous media structure, with all the 6 companies that control it all, them being heavily biased, predominantly towards the establishment narrative. Even more so than Democrat versus Republican. That's why someone like Ron Paul got screwed. But definitely leaning to the left, Democrat versus Republican. We were told by all these people, no big deal. That doesn't have that big of an effect. Suck it up. But then all of a sudden, 12 trolls post something on Facebook and it's, oh my goodness, it stole the election. That's stupid, and you know it. You know it's ridiculous. Now, the reason I bring this all up is this point. Another thing like that occurred during the Mueller investigation. And that was, we were told, the Mueller report proved, that the underlying crime that Trump was accused of colluding with Russians, or people on his team colluding with Russians, illegally to affect the 2016 election, was wrong. There was no underlying crime. But Trump still obstructed justice. And one of the ways they said he obstructed justice was because he was grousing and complaining about Mueller potentially being biased and having 14 angry Democrats on his side. And he, even though he didn't fire Mueller, he talked to his people about potentially firing Mueller. And the argument, the height of the stupidity about why this was obstruction of justice was, this was repeated verbatim by almost every Democrat, by almost every media person. Oh man, he was trying to stop the investigation into himself. No matter that the crime didn't occur, that was being investigated, no matter that the investigation went off without any interference, as admitted by both Comey and Mueller. Doesn't matter. The fact that he complained about the investigation, the fact that he suggested removing Mueller, even though he didn't do it, is obstruction of justice. And now, here I was like, this is so stupid. Are you kidding me? And of course, I got 24 people that listen to me, maybe. Why is it stupid? What? Remember, every time you're cheering, and I know I have friends that maybe watch this that don't like Trump. Every time you're cheering at some of this stupidity or corruption against Trump, you have to know it will eventually be used against you or someone you like. You just have to know it. Anytime you cheer for government power or government corruption to go after people you don't like, you should always assume eventually people you don't like will also have that power. So if you're for the FBI being allowed to spy on a presidential campaign under Obama, and you think that Trump's Hitler, you've just given Trump the power to do that to his next opponent. Can't you see that? If you're for Joe Biden being allowed, and Obama's administration being allowed to withhold taxpayer funds to another country unless they fire a prosecutor looking into Biden's family, then you've just given Trump the authority to do that. Can't you see that? If you're for smearing Trump as a Russian asset, then you're for when the Republicans do that to any Democrat. It's just, this isn't complex stuff. So when you say Trump complaining about the guy investigating him and suggesting he wanted it to end, that's obstruction of justice. What did I say back then? On video, what am I saying? I'm like, okay, because predictably, what comes next? Well, we're going to get the IG report. We had Barr out there already sending signals. Hey, we're going to investigate people. Who are some of the people that could potentially be investigated? Many of these Democrats, many of the intel agency people, even non-governmental actors like the media that were getting illegal leaks, that were spreading lies. They might be part of the investigation. And I said, okay, if this is what you're saying, that complaining about investigations or complaining about the people carrying those investigations is itself a crime, that's obstruction of justice. We're going to see within months the Democrats, the media, the intel people en masse committing the exact crime they're accusing Trump of committing. That's why it was stupid. So, where are we at today? 12 Democrats have wrote a letter demanding the removal of Barr and Durham and the end of their investigation. How is that not obstruction of justice? Based on their interpretation of it. So there's this guy that's going to be investigating them and investigating their allies, and they want him removed. Okay, that's obstruction of justice. Oh, no, this is different, they'll say, because Barr and Durham are corrupt. That's how Trump felt about Mueller. Yeah, but we know we're right and they're wrong. Do you see how this works every single time? They get away with it because the media, the narrative is controlled by the left, by the establishment left. So the mainstream media, academia, the entertainment industry, Silicon Valley, they all set the narrative. So we just have to take it because the Republicans are inept. They can't fight back. So we have to watch the hypocrisy right in front of our face. Congress voted to impeach, right? The Constitution says then the Speaker of the House, who's Pelosi, would give those articles of impeachment to the Senate, who would then carry out a trial to ensure justice prevails. That's what a trial is. Pelosi is shirking her constitutional duty and refusing to give over the articles of impeachment, thereby preventing a trial from happening, perhaps. How is that not obstruction of justice? Preventing a trial from going forward. Just stupid. Just absolute stupidity. So, all right. So, hour and 15 minutes. I'm halfway through my... What I titled this video was the problem with the Dem candidates. And that's what I thought I'd talk about first. But I decided to talk about the abuse, the impeachment, the coup first. Because that's the big problem with all the Democrat candidates, as I'll get to in a second. So, full disclosure, I did not watch most of the Democratic debates. I've seen clips. But why would I watch it? Right, you're right, WC. It is a quid pro quo by Nancy. Why would I watch the Dem debates? Nothing new is going to occur. It's all one-sided propaganda stuff. No one's asking them actual difficult questions. And they all agree on the issue that I think is the most important issue in the country right now. And I say this all the time. What's their issue? Like, just take one at random. What's Klobuchar's big issue? What's Bernie? We'll take Bernie. Medicare for all, right? That's Bernie's big issue? Healthcare. Okay. And actually, although I'm not for Medicare for all, I understand healthcare is a very reasonable issue to be concerned about. And I have problems with the Republicans on this. I basically have to choose between the Democrats' terrible plan and the Republicans' what plan? Remember, Trump's tried to get the Republicans on board over and over. Let's come up with a healthcare plan. Let's work together with the Republicans in Congress. And what do the Republicans keep telling them? No. That's not a winner for us politically. I'm tired of that crap. I'm tired of the game of politics. How about we help actual Americans? So even though I don't like the Medicare for all plan, the Republicans aren't talking about much, and I'm doing okay right now with my healthcare plan. But I know there are people that aren't. And yes, I understand Republicans will be like, oh yeah, but, the Democrats were all for Obamacare, and now they're running on how terrible Obamacare is. I get it, yes, I get it. They suck. I'm not saying they're good. But it's an issue to be concerned. I don't begrudge Bernie or anyone for bringing up the issue. I might disagree with their solution, but it's a real issue. It is. I'm here to tell you that issue doesn't matter, though. It matters to me. It matters to you. It matters to Bernie. But it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. Why? Because if our country's ran by corrupt intelligence agencies that could, at a whim, destroy your rights or destroy the rights of Bernie and spy on him and call him a Russian asset and assure, even if he's elected, that he's not able to do anything effectually, and the media will parrot the intel agencies, then his issues don't matter. And his voters' issues don't matter. That's why every single person out there, even if you hate Trump, should be fighting against this corruption. They don't care. You think the FBI, you think the people running the FBI care about the issues you care about? You think the career politicians give two hoots what their average constituent thinks? The majority of them? You think the wealthy business owner class, the George Soros types of the world, you think they care at all about your healthcare plan? They care about power, consolidating it, lying to people, doing whatever they can to ensure that they get more and more power, more and more wealth. That's what they care about. They care about having foreign regime change wars to help them enrich themselves. That's what they care about. They'll leave us fight over abortion or gay rights, healthcare. They'll pay lip service. But unless they really do care about your healthcare, nothing will change. There'll be periphery stuff. The voice of the American people don't matter as long as there are unelected bureaucrats that are running the show. That's what we see with Trump. That's what the IG report showed. You could see it in the impeachment hearings. All of these diplomats, unelected bureaucrats that have been in Washington for years, gotten incredibly wealthy. He's disrupting our foreign policy. Your foreign policy? Who elected you? So when I see even, right, there are left-wing people, I talk about them a lot. There's not a lot of them, but they exist. That hate Trump, but they're against this coup attempt. They're against the FBI abuses. They're against the impeachment stuff. People like Jimmy Dore, Michael Tracy, Aaron Mattei, Glenn Greenwald, right? They're out there. They celebrate people like Bernie and Tulsi because they're progressives or whatever. But as long as Bernie or Tulsi or any of the Democrats aren't actively speaking up against this abuse, then it's a wasted vote. Because one, they're either involved with the corruption or they're complacent with it. And either way, it does nothing to solve the biggest problem. Easily, who has been the most active person in talking about this corruption? Like him or hate him, it's Donald Trump. So if this is the biggest issue in the country, and it affects every other issue, why would you vote against the guy? Or at least, even if you vote against him, why wouldn't you say, I at least support his efforts in fighting back this corruption? Said you're going to root for Bernie? What has Bernie said from day one? He's someone who should know better. He's been smeared as pro-Russian. Remember the honeymoon video singing the Soviet national anthem with his shirt off? Yeah, I don't recall him saying this Russia stuff's garbage. I don't recall that. I don't recall him after the Mueller report saying this was ridiculous. I don't recall him talking about the impeachment process being ridiculous. Nope. So whether through complacency or corruption, he's all for the corruption that's occurring against Trump. He's all for the coup. But Aaron Mattei and Michael Tracy and all these people that are against Jimmy Dore, that are against the coup, they're like, well, I'm going to vote for Bernie. Why? He's for the coup. Every single one of these candidates, save maybe one, who could be doing a better job, and there's plenty of stuff I don't like about him anyways, and that's Yang. I did see a clip where Yang said at this last, he hasn't spoken up against the Russia investigation as much as he should have, or the impeachment, but he at least said this. Yeah, Bernie did sell out, Luis. Thanks for joining. Yang at least said this in this clip I saw. He said, look, this was just at the last debate. He said, people don't trust Congress. Their approval's lower than Trump's. It's like 17%. People don't trust the media. It's lower than that. And they're tired of being lied to about why Trump won. Trump didn't win because the media and the Democrats tell us, oh, he's racist and Russia. This is Yang saying this at the debate. He said he didn't win because Trump, it's a combination of Trump being racist and Trump working with Russians. He won because manufacturing jobs are leaving the country, because people were struggling economically, because they felt like they didn't have a voice. That's why Trump won. Now, Yang's clearly running against Trump, so you don't expect him to be a Trump supporter. He'd probably say, I don't think Trump came through on his promises, which of course you would expect him to say. That's reasonable. I thought that was an incredibly powerful thing for Yang to say, regardless of what you think of the rest of his policies. And again, yes, it's a little too late. When it mattered, he wasn't really there. But hey, we're in the middle of the impeachment stuff, and he said it didn't matter, that we need to stop focusing on that and focus on the real issues. So I applaud him for that. Still, he would be my favorite pick amongst the Democrats. Now, he also claims that we're going to tax meat to the point where you can't afford it, and you won't be able to own a private car. So he kind of loses my vote right there. But at least those are matters of policy differences. I think his policies are crazy. And he said some social justice-y, like race stuff that I think's crap. He's basically for decriminalizing illegal immigration. That stuff's crap. But those are policy differences. If he would speak voraciously against the coup occurring against Trump, That earns my respect, at least. Thanks, Stuart. I really appreciate it. Now, that brings me... That's Yang. He did good. Every other candidate for the Democrats, not one of them have spoken up against this coup. Most of them have actively participated. They're for the impeachment. They're for the Mueller stuff. They haven't said square one about the FISA abuses by the FBI. To the extent that they have, they said they were just mistakes. How dare Trump criticize the FBI, etc. That's all of them. Bernie included. Yeah, I'll get to that part, WZ, I will, about reparations for illegals. Oh, my God. Now, Tulsi's the exception, right? So, Tulsi, these people I'm talking about, these Democrats that don't like Trump, but they're against the coup, they couldn't be more happy with Tulsi because she voted present. She didn't vote for the impeachment. Oh, what a noble thing to do. What a great thing to do. No, it wasn't. She saw the political headwinds. She saw that support for impeachment was going down. Look, it's when you're talking about political strategy, particularly in this Democratic field, you have to be thinking of ways to stand out from the others, right? So there's certain issues that you know that you're not going to win if you don't support, like climate change or something. But you got to stand out one way or another. Now, I like Tulsi. I was okay with her going and talking to Assad. I thought she had a very Ron Paul... By the way, Ron Paul is my favorite politician. I thought she had a very Ron Paul-esque foreign policy, which is like, we need to get out of these foreign regime change war quagmires. And she's a veteran, which kind of gives a gravitas to it. By the way, I'm sick and tired of this idea that... because someone's a veteran, you can't criticize them or something. That's garbage. I respect veterans in their service, and they're like even John McCain, who I think was a terrible person, but I still respect his service. He did something I never could. I respect that about him. I do. But I also think part of treating our veterans with respect is not infantilizing them and treating them like children that says, oh, you're a veteran, so I can't disagree or criticize you. That's garbage. Thank you for your service. You have no idea how much it means to the country. You're a hero, but I disagree with your policy, or I disagree with the way you're handling yourself. I think it's disrespectful to treat them different based on the fact that you admire their service. Because I've got a lot of flack on Twitter for criticizing Tulsi for this. How dare you? She's a veteran. So, okay. Anyways, so I like Tulsi. And so it was much to my chagrin when I saw some of the stances she started taking. The first was the whole Trump's a racist garbage. Whatever, though. I mean, I was just like, whatever. It's just... But then, more specifically on the Russia stuff and the investigation of Trump. Now, Tulsi herself is smeared as a pro-Russian stooge. That's what Hillary called her. When she met with Assad, that's what the Democrats said about her. That's the mainstream establishment smear of Tulsi. Because no matter what, issue number one for the establishment, on both sides, keep the wars going. Keep the conflicts going. That's how they make money. Geez, if there wasn't a big conflict going on with us and Russia, it may have been difficult for Hunter Biden to get a job in the Ukraine while his dad's giving hundreds of millions of dollars to the Ukraine that's then getting siphoned back into Hunter Biden. And oh, by the way, a bunch of other politicians' kids. If there wasn't an excuse to give them all that defense spending, maybe it would have been hard for them to enrich themselves. Plus the defense contractors, the military-industrial complex, all of this money that's being churned doing that stuff. I tell my friends again, I have friends, a lot of liberal friends, a lot of Democrat friends. I was against the Iraq War, even though I was kind of libertarian conservative. Against it. I was against W. Bush. I was in college at the time. Most of my friends were left-leaning. They were against it. Now where are they? 15 years later. Now they're for the xenophobia. Now they're for defending the intel community. And they say, I've changed. I haven't changed at all. I'm still against government corruption. I'm still against bombing countries unless we have proof that they did something that warrants the bombing. I was against Trump bombing Syria. Kim Iverson. I will. I'll check that out. So I was cool with Tulsi's stance. She was like, yes. And what I tell my friends are, you will never get a real pro-peace candidate on the left. As long as this corruption's allowed to exist. You won't. Who's the pro-peace candidate for the Democrats? Tulsi. What do? Smear her as a Russian asset. She committed the same crime Trump committed, which is, they're coming from different areas, but they both looked at Russia and said, why don't we try to improve relations? Why are we arming al-Nusra, al-Qaeda, and ISIS in Syria to fight Putin's ally Assad instead of working with Assad and Putin to wipe out ISIS, al-Nusra, and al-Qaeda? So Trump asked, that's probably what Tulsi's thinking. Well, that can't stand. So would the Queen, Hillary, say? Oh, she's a Putin stooge. So if anyone understands the smears against Trump, it was Tulsi Gabbard. Yet what did she do? She came out, first she said, I'm against the impeachment investigation. Then she came out like 3 days later, once the polling showed that that was the wrong thing to do for her election chances, because she's a coward and a hypocrite. And she said, yes, now I am for the investigation. Let me see if I can find it. There's an article that I posted on Twitter about this. It's probably behind a paywall, though. I hate these stupid paywalls. Well, anyways, just take my word for it. You could look it up. It was a New York Times article. But there's other articles where they talk about this specifically. Tulsi was for the impeachment investigation. So the fact that and she was for it based on the transcript of the call with Zelensky. She said that it would be something to the effect of be a dereliction of duty to not investigate this. I've been saying since then, all these Republicans are like, oh, Tulsi, she blah, blah, blah. I said, no, hypocrite. She's disgusting. She had a chance right then. This is what she should have said. If I was running Tulsi's campaign, she ain't going to win in 2020, period. But once the Democrat wreckage is shown from 2020 and beyond for how corrupt they are, she could have been the premier person that would have even got right-wing people and independent people because she came through with integrity. Here's what she could have said. I'm tired of these smears of Trump as a Russian asset. It's xenophobia. It's driving us to an armed conflict with a nuclear superpower. It's dangerous and wrong. It is the new McCarthyism. I don't like Trump. This is her speaking. I think he's done bad things for the, domestically. I think he's done bad things foreign policy-wise. But I am not going to allow this impeachment coup to occur based on these lies and garbage that are being spread by the same people that are spreading that lies and garbage at me. I know that it's garbage. We need to stop using our investigative agencies and our political tools of things like impeachment as a weapon to go after our opponents. But she didn't say that, did she? She said, yeah, I'm for the impeachment investigation. You know what else she said before that? You remember Kavanaugh? Remember him? The guy whose life the left ruined because he had the gall to accept a nomination for the Supreme Court under Trump? Yeah, that guy. You remember? We now know at least some of the women have admitted to making up the rape allegations. How could that be, Rob? Wait a minute, didn't the left tell us there's no reason whatsoever for the women to make up any accusations? There's none. There'd be no benefit to them. Forget the $500,000 book deals and being called heroes and being named people of the year and, being a celebrity to all the celebrities in the U.S. No, none of that would be reason. There's no reason. There's no reason. Well, now we know some of the women flat out admitted to making it up. Oh, well. Huh. Isn't that weird? We don't hear there's no reason people anymore, do we? Remember the latest Kavanaugh smear? It's hard to remember. The news cycle, the Democrats, the media, the establishment, they come after people so fast. They're going after everyone connected to Trump so fast, and they're so corrupt in doing so, it's hard to keep track of what happened 2 weeks ago. But here was the story, in a nutshell. Some guy that was like a Democrat and that was actually defending Clinton while Kavanaugh was on the other side during the impeachment. He claimed that he was at a party in college, right? And at that party, Kavanaugh had whipped his penis out, and then someone shoved Kavanaugh's and his penis into some girl's hand or face. Now, for those of you that might have heard that story and say, wait a minute, how's that bad for Kavanaugh? Someone sexually assaulted Kavanaugh? Someone grabbed Kavanaugh's penis, shoved it into someone else? So that's him being assaulted? No. See, Kavanaugh's a white man. He's a Republican, conservative. So, yeah, he's the rapist. Even if someone forcibly removed his pants and then grabbed his genitals and shoved it in someone, even if that happened, it's still Kavanaugh being a rapist. Because, white man, conservative. That's the rules. Keep up now. You got to keep up with this. Now, the only problem was, even in that crazy world of things, the alleged victim, she said it never happened. That she wasn't a victim. And she wanted to be left alone. And so the media outed her name. Yep, that's right. You're not going to go along with their little game? Just like, remember Christine Blasey Ford? God, I wish I remembered her name. Remember her friend that was the witness? Only she testified, no, that didn't happen. Then she got smeared by Blasey Ford Associates. They said, we're going to release all this information of you having substance abuses. Isn't that weird? The party of women, the party of respect to all women, over and over, when those women don't go along with their crazy rape allegations, then they have to be smeared and attacked, right? What's up, Casey? Yeah, Pacey, Michelle, I didn't read a lot about the spending bill, but troubling again. One of the big problems with Trump is the deficit spending. So I'll have to read exactly what was in the bill before I give an opinion on it. But anyways, back to this story. So this woman gets smeared. Based on that, that's nothing, right? Let me repeat what's said. Some guy who was opposed to Kavanaugh anyways, literally was on opposing sides with the Clinton impeachment. He was working for Clinton. Who doesn't like Kavanaugh. Who stands everywhere to have Kavanaugh removed from the court. He says he saw Kavanaugh get his penis pushed into some girl. That girl says never happened. That's it. That's the end of the story. Based on that, you know what super brave Tulsi Gabbard said? You know what she said based on that? We need an investigation into Kavanaugh. There's your brave Tulsi Gabbard standing up against the system. Trump gets smeared as a Russian? Yeah, we need an investigation. Kavanaugh got smeared by the same people with this garbage allegation? Yeah, we need an investigation. But then when she gets smeared, what's she say? This is horrible. How dare Hillary accuse me of this? Oh, the media's rigging this. They won't leave me in the debate. Oh, it's so unfair to me. Sorry, Tulsi. I know you voted present because you realize people like me were right. You see the writing on the wall now. You know that the corruption's coming out. You know that it's going to stain the Democratic Party. So you're trying to throw a last-ditch Hail Mary saying, oh, I voted present, so I wasn't involved in any of that. Well, people like me that actually respected a lot of your platform won't let you live it down. You corrupt hypocrite. When it affects you, it's a big deal. How about this? How about if Tulsi, she voted present, but she thought there needed, because it was so serious because Trump's president, so there needed to be an investigation of him. How about Tulsi publicly come out and say, well, her meeting with Assad, we need to release all the transcripts of it and have an investigation into herself to impeach her. How about that, right? Oh, she won't do that. She would say that's outrageous. Huh. Why can't she just cheer for an investigation herself and vote present? So, yeah, sorry, not buying Tulsi. By the way, then I have a friend who's a Democrat, and he's like, why didn't she just vote no then? What does present? When she gave her statement, so here's the pushback I've got from my comments on Tulsi. She's a veteran, so I can't say that. That's garbage, as I've already articulated. She gave her reasons for voting present. It had nothing to do with what I just said. It said Trump committed crimes in Syria, and Trump did this, and Trump did that, and Trump did this. Huh, funny. I don't remember Tulsi calling for impeachment to Obama for committing some of the very same crimes. Isn't that strange? You know, I'll give you an example. It's kind of going out there, but there's this guy, Douglas Murray, who kind of, he's British, and he writes a lot about all the refugees and the problems that they're bringing in to the UK. He happens to be a gay guy. And I saw him giving this speech where he's like, look, as a gay guy, I get sick and tired of these left-wing people coming up to me, you know, I'm for gay rights. Point me to the nearest bishop. Point me to the nearest vicar. I'll tell them. He's like, please. Because the people that really are trying to kill me, these radical Islamic clerics, you won't say a damn word to them. Yeah, you'll criticize the guy that you know can't affect you, right? But when it's something where you actually put something on the line, put your virtue signaling where your mouth is, all of a sudden, your bravery's out the window. Same with Tulsi here. Same with LeBron and the NBA, right? They'll criticize Trump and they'll criticize the NRA, and but when it's China where they're making all this money, the first time they actually have a chance to say something brave, something that could negatively affect their wallet, and despite being massive multimillionaires, all of a sudden their bravery's out the window. Give us an example. Who's trying to kill you? If Douglas Murray speaking as a gay man is what I was saying. That you have radical Islamic clerics that are that either advocate death for homosexuality or that it should be illegal. So it's one thing because it's the progressive orthodoxy to say, the Christian church, if they don't like homosexuality, yes, we'll attack them, blah, blah, blah. But you won't say a word against the people in Islam that are even more severe against homosexuality. So that's the big issue with the Democrats. Other than, with the exception of possibly Yang, who's not doing it well enough, certainly not better than Trump, none of them are speaking up against this corruption. If you don't speak up against this corruption and this coup, then all the other issues don't matter. So, other issues. Almost all of them, without exception, are for identity politics. Did you see that clip? They're asking Bernie this question. They're like, old men, people have said, Obama said that old men need to get out of the way, for, politics, blah, blah, blah. Remember, Obama just said if women ran the world, everything would be better. What a joke. They're like, Bernie is the oldest person and is a man, and Bernie says, and I'm white. I'm white. Don't forget I'm white. We get it, dude. Gotta self-flagellate. I'm so sorry for being an old man and an old white man. Oh, it's such a disgrace to be an old white man. Oh, I'm so sorry. What a joke. Now look, I know the criticism to me criticizing identity politics is to some extent everyone plays the game. Because your identity could be more than your color. It could be your political affiliation. It could be your job. And I get that. But what I'm talking about specifically is using your race. Like the things that we don't have control of, like your race and gender, somehow matter. How about this? Elizabeth Warren says she's going to go to the Rose Garden once a year and read the names of every person of color or transgender person that's been killed. So their deaths are somehow more meaningful than, like, if a white man was killed or a straight woman, a non-person of color woman was killed? Are you insane? It's absolutely ridiculous. And you can see this in everything they do. This idea of, and again, it comes back. I was told, I should start keeping a record of all the stuff I was told that I was wrong about. It just couldn't be the case. It couldn't be the case. that it turns out I was right about. Deep state. There's no deep state. What? You think the Democrats would be for open borders? No way. Identity politics. You think that they would judge you based just on your gender or your sexuality or your skin color? No way. And now it's like, well, of course we do. Right. Yeah, that's J.K. Rowling, which I was going to get to, but I'm probably not going to make it to it. I mean, it's ridiculous. So I can't vote for that garbage. And the Republicans, by the way, need to do a better job on this. You know, I've told this story many times. I ran for Congress. You know, one of the first things I said I would do was talk to the Democrats if I won. The people that voted Democrat. And people are like, why? Well, because I would represent them as well. Republicans should be out in the inner cities right now. Are they going to win most of those votes? No. That's okay. They should let those people know. We will be representing you too. The Republican Party should be the party of Martin Luther King. We don't care about your skin color. We don't care about your gender. We don't care about your sexual preference or your religion, any of that. We care about the content of your character. We're not going to make laws that say, oh, if you're one skin color, this, and if you're another skin color, this, or if you're a man, this, or a woman, this. Now, yes, there are slight exceptions because of biology, right? Like, I get it. But overwhelmingly, our system will treat people as equals. Yes, I understand some of you come from racial groups or sexual preference groups or whatever that have been discriminated in the past. But every time the government tries to make up for those mistakes, you just exacerbate the problem and make it worse. So from here on, we wipe the slate clean. The law treats everyone equally. That's what the Republican Party should be. When we're in the inner city and you're talking to someone, we're not talking to you as a young black man. You're whoever you are. And we think that you're able to be a Republican or Democrat, or you could be pro-choice or pro-life or pro-gay rights or, against gay men, whatever. You're not asked to dogmatically follow an ideology just because of your skin color or just because of your sexual preference or just because of your religion. That's nonsense. We're all human beings. That's what the Republican Party should be doing. But certainly the Democrats are the opposite of that. And that goes without saying. The number one factor about you to the Democrats are, what's your skin color? What's your sexual preference? What's your gender? Cultural Marxism, which I was told didn't exist. That's exactly what it is. And then they line up. Oh, victimhood. Some of these groups are oppressors, some are oppressed. We have to have intersectionality to all identify, to go against the avatar of oppression, which is Donald Trump, right? White, rich, male, straight. So and all the Democrats are guilty of that. And just real quick, the Green New Deal, all of them are for some form of that. It's garbage. It's the most draconian, authoritarian legislation I've ever seen. It would literally take like 2/3 of our economy, our entire energy sector. It's insanity. It really is. I talked about it a million times before. Immigration, almost all of them are for decriminalizing illegal immigration. We had, as WZ was saying, we had Buttigieg, for example, say he would pay reparations, hundreds of thousands of dollars apiece to people he felt were mistreated by our ICE agents, like children that were put in cages, etc. I saw one estimate, this would cost about $2.2 trillion. What do you think that would do to the incentive of people wanting to come? So now it's decriminalized. You get free healthcare if you're here. We'll probably put you through a 3 education system. And if, for whatever reason, we would hold you up at the border whatsoever, then we'll pay you huge sums of money because we don't have the right to do that. What do you think that'll do to illegal immigrants considering coming here? I think I'd be on my way. The last thing is, all of these people, the more progressive you get, they have their utopia. They have it. Now I know they control the narrative, as I talked about already. And I know they have flowery language. And they sound like the people that actually love you. They have the emotion on their side. Oh, they care about people and you don't. And yeah, we get it, okay? The experiment is playing out. It's in San Francisco. It's in Los Angeles. It's feudalism. It is they live in their ivory towers. Mark Zuckerberg could lecture you about your stance on illegal immigration and how immoral the wall is and how we need to accept all these people because they benefit him financially. It's cheap labor. He lives 2 blocks from people living in filth with hypodermic needles on the street, people fecal matter all over the street. Record levels of poverty in our country. 2 blocks away from him, he don't do a damn thing. He lives in his gated house. Same with Pelosi. Same with Feinstein. All of these people. Why would we want that for the rest of the country? They talk about income inequality, yet the more they control things, the more income inequality there is. They want to give you your bread and circus. They want you to be a serf. They want you totally dependent on the government. They want the elimination of the middle class. That's what they want. They make it sound good. They say, oh, no, we want to take care of everyone. This isn't just right-wing people that are against this, right? Postmodernist Michel Foucault, by no means am I an expert. As lefty as they come, hated the government, right? I debated Foucault all the time when I was in debate. Not him, people using his literature. He talks about the concept of biopower. And this is someone, a lefty that understands Foucault could give you a far better explanation than me. But the idea in the most basic form is this. You should be wary to give government the power over your life. It's like a light switch. If you can't get sustenance unless it's from the government, in other words, you rely on them for food, or you rely on them for shelter, or for a job, right? It's like they have a light switch with your life, and it's turned on right now. But when they have the power to turn that switch on, you've also inherently given them the power to turn that switch off. That's the problem. That's what they want. Total power. Just like Stalin, just like Mao. That's what they want. And they'll police your language. Right now, it's just the public doing, which is scary enough. Right now, it's just companies like Twitter or Google. What's that, J.K. Rowling? You said that men are men and women are women? Canceled. That guy burned an LGBT flag, which, by the way, I'm against. Not only am I for gay rights, but it was probably someone's I didn't see, but it was probably someone's personal property. That's bad. 15 years he got for it? You burn an American flag, it's free speech. If these people had power, that's what all of us would be under. You can't criticize them. You have to call them whatever they want. You have to grovel before them. They'll hand you your bread every day. Shut up. You're not allowed to criticize them. That's their utopia. That's what they have right now in California. So I'm sorry, I don't want that. Oh, by the way, go put that in with the first point we talked about. None of them have a problem with the corruption, the FBI being corrupt against Trump. You don't think they'd weaponize their assets to go after their enemies? Just like Mao, just like Stalin, just like Mao. I'm not saying there's not a place for a social safety net. Of course there is. But this absurd socialism, giving them all... Every one of their policies is always about them increasing power. And every single issue they claim is the most moral issue. There's only one morally righteous take on it, whether it be environmentalism or immigration. They live the exact opposite of what they preach. Bernie's against the wealthy, but he's a multi-billionaire or millionaire. How many lake houses does he need? How many private jets does he have to fly on? They're for open borders, but they live in gated communities. They're against guns, but they have armed guards. It's always everyone else that's a problem. Just like the feudal kingdoms. The kings and the queens and, right, the dukes, they can do whatever they want in their castle. The law doesn't apply to them. Even with, it used to be like that with religion, right? They told the plebes, oh, you have to do this, or you go to hell. But wait a minute, sir. You don't do that. Well, I'm a lord. I'm closer to God. It's okay for me to be a hypocrite. So, yeah. All right. So here's a segment. I don't know how much longer I'll be able to go. Maybe 15, 20 minutes. But here's a segment that I want to start doing. And that is, look at when Rob was right. So let me shrink my head here for a minute. I write a lot on different blogs. I do a ton of videos. And I forget. And it's not just me. This is anyone, right? Like, the news cycle's so hard to keep up. Something happens, and then 2 weeks later, you forget about it. So, in an effort to show that I'm not... Hey, what's up, Milo? Thanks for being here, man. By the way, I just want to say thanks to Milo. He was my first Patreon supporter. And there's another person you always see on here named Dib, who is also a Patreon supporter. It really means a lot to me. It honestly does, and I really thank you guys. But I write about this stuff a lot, so I want to try at least once a week to go back to something I wrote from a time in the past and show how it's relevant today. So, for our story today, have you heard about this shooting that occurred in Jersey? And so you can see here, this is from December 12th, which I'm a week late, but I was busy. Jersey City shooting suspects tied to Black Hebrew Israelites, authorities say. This is from The Independent in UK, so by no means some far right-wing site. Let's just read a little here. Investigators have found ties between two killers who stormed a kosher market in Jersey City this week and the Black Hebrew Israelites, after originally saying the attack appeared random. The attackers have been identified as, we're not going to say their names. The connection was determined after officials found that one of the shooters apparently posted anti-Semitic messages online and was a follower of the fringe movement that expresses hostility towards Jews and white people. Now, I bring that up just to show that's the story. That's what we know now. Those are the facts as we know it. Okay? What had happened was they killed, I think, 3 people and a police officer. They were anti-Semitic. Yeah, I think it was Representative Talib came out and said, white supremacy, here we go. That's what she tweeted, white supremacy. Whoops, it was a black supremacist, so delete that tweet. And this is a problem you see occurring over and over, which is, I have no love for any type of racial identitarian at all. If the most important thing about you is your skin color, we probably don't have a lot to talk about. I'll still talk to you. But certainly if you're using that for racist beliefs or policies, then that's a non-starter for me. So I certainly, the KKK or neo-Nazis, screw them. Yeah, I have no problem saying that. But what we see happening is it's constantly overblown, that problem, and we ignore that all sorts of groups have identitarian movements that can be racist or bigoted. So for example, in New York City, attacks on Jews are going through the roof. But when we see video evidence of it, weirdly enough, it's not the guy in the Klan hood or the skinhead. It's a darker skinned person. How could that be? We're told it's white supremacy. That's what hates the Jews. But there's other groups that dislike Jewish people. One of them is the Black Hebrew Israelites, right? And this is this group that believes they're the true Jewish people or something. I don't know their crazy beliefs. I know they're racist. I know they don't like white people. I know they don't like Jews. So when this story came out and I heard that these two killers were connected to the Black Hebrew Israelites, I was like, well, that sounds really familiar. Where have I heard of this group? Maybe you remember. Remember the Covington kids? The kid that was wearing the MAGA hat that the Native American Nathan Phillips came up and got in his face and beat the drum? And then we found out what was really going on was this group, it was the Black Hebrew Israelites, were yelling homophobic and racial slurs at these kids for like an hour. And then Nathan Phillips, the Native American, he's the keeper of a sacred drum. That's important to know, right? All the media articles at the time said he keeps the sacred pipe, a keeper of a sacred pipe of his people, the noble Nathan Phillips. He said, here's his own words, he said, oh, I saw these kids like wolves, surrounded these black guys, and, they were telling these kids some uncomfortable truths. So I had to defend these black guys. Imagine that. Imagine being an adult and seeing a bunch of, racist white guys in Klan hoods yelling at a bunch of black children and saying, oh, these black children are hearing the KKK's telling them some harsh truths they need to hear, and I had to protect the KKK against these kids. You think we'd be talking about how you're the keeper of a sacred pipe? You'd be called a bigot. But when Nathan Phillips did it, he's a keeper of the sacred pipe. He's a hero. Defending racist. That's who the black Hebrew Israelites are. Now you might say, okay, so what's this all about? Let me read you what I wrote on January 24th. I'll try to make it bigger so you can see. January 24th, 2019. That's me, Grambler, on this site above Top Secret. I use Bill Hicks as my avatar. Maybe I'll change it to him. I know. I'll just start reading here. January 24th, 2019. So I've been going on how the media has been deflecting or ignoring the racist black Hebrew Israelites that attacked the MAGA hat kids. And of course, doing the same for the fact that the noble native elder Phillips said that this group told the kids harsh truths that have been hidden from them. And I showed how the media is continuing to attack these kids by dredging up incidents that have no context or were from the school years ago, and are in fact now seeking to write a piece on exposing Christian schools. Just a little background. But this tale might take the cake even for the New York Times. So now they have decided to write what amounts to a puff piece for this black racist group. It's all about how the group feels this incident can be helpful in getting their message out, and how they can preach their doctrine to people. It doesn't mention the actual vile things they said to the kids, only that it was a, quote, profane exchange. Can you imagine the New York Times writing a piece like this about the KKK? Of course not. But let's get to the meat of it. Eventually, the New York Times does cite the infamous Southern Poverty Law Center, the go-to organization for government and companies on defining hate groups. And then I say in parentheses, they're actually a part of some hacks that are worthless, as this article proves. And they say that the black Hebrews are a hate group. Let me bring up, now this New York Times article, I'll bring it up and I'll link it so you can see that I'm not lying, but it's probably behind a paywall. Maybe not, though. Anyways, here you go if you want to follow along. But I'm going to go back to my writing of it, and where I quote them. This is from the New York Times article. The Southern Poverty Law Center, which tracks extremist groups, categorized at least 80 groups nationwide that follow the Hebrew Israelite theology as hate groups. They account for about a third of the organizations that the center considered black nationalist groups in 2017. The number of black nationalist groups has been increasing in response to President Trump, said Heidi Berich, who oversees the center's tracking of hate groups. These groups are able to use things like the president's disparaging remarks about predominantly black countries and his abandonment of civil rights reforms to recruit new members, she said. Sounds very unbiased, right? Oh, it's Trump's fault that the black racists are coming up. That would be like saying, oh, KKK numbers are up, it's Obama's fault. You think the New York Times would write that? They continue. They argue that the best response to the evils of government is to separate and form their own institutions. That is not necessarily a radical idea for many black people. But Ms. Berich said the groups like Hebrew Israelites are also anti-gay, anti-white, and anti-Semitic. They believe they are actually descendant of Israelites in the Bible, not the Jews. So I write, okay, so they're a hate group, and black hate groups have been rising since Trump was elected. Why don't we hear about black hate groups rising? Why doesn't the New York Times write more about that? I wonder why not. They don't talk about, they acknowledge that the black hate groups are rising. We know that, for example, anti-Semitic attacks from black people are increasing in New York, but they only talk about anti-Semitism when it could possibly affect Trump. I wonder why that is. Anyways, we're still getting to the meat of it here. Okay, so anyways, let's see what this head of the Berich, the head of the Southern Poverty Law Center, says further. Here's a quote from her. These are really fringe movements, and they're also very different than white nationalist groups that have access to power. This kind of thinking arose in reaction to white supremacy and the abuse and exploitation of black people. And then it's me again. I say, see, they aren't as bad as the KKK because they don't have power. What is she talking about? The KKK is almost universally maligned. Just having their name attached to you in the slightest way is a career ender. Meanwhile, hate preachers that are black like Farrakhan can pal around with even Obama, and no problem. The establishment Democrat holds almost complete control over the levers of cultural power, academia, entertainment industry, the mainstream media, and all the tech companies. Yet groups like the KKK have access to power? Can you name me one of those groups I just mentioned that the KKK is prominent in? Meanwhile, real power is being able to be a racist group that is considered an everyday part of life, that will have the New York Times write pieces about you, and that can attack white children and everyone basically ignore you. And I love how she makes the excuse that this is just a racist group because of evil white groups. She says, quote, even though their style might be intimidating, Miss Barrett said the Hebrew Israelites do not have a history of violence. Now here we go. This is the important part. Here's getting to the meat. The New York Times is spreading crap that this black hate group, they're kind of bad. They don't talk about how they were attacking these white kids and what they were saying. They're doing a puff piece for them, and then they lie and say they don't have a history of violence. This is basically a puff piece for a racist black nationalist group in the New York Times. And I'm writing about it in January of 2019. Almost 12 months ago. They say, again, I'll quote them, even though their style might be intimidating, Miss Barrett said the Hebrew Israelites do not have a history of violence. I say, this is a deal breaker. No history of violence? That's the official stance of the Southern Poverty Law Center? That's what the New York Times is printing? Here's from an article called The Village Voice. Black Hebrew Israelites began showing up in East Coast ghettos in the 70s. Members of the Miami-based Nation of Yahweh were indicted in the 1990 on RICO charges that included extortion, arson, and 14 counts of murder. Founder Yahweh Ben Yahweh went to federal prison for conspiring to kill random white people, including one beheading, as an initiation rite into his sect. He was said to have told members to kill me a white devil and bring me an ear. I say 14 murders, a beheading, and a leader who called for the murder of white people and got it. And the Southern Poverty Law Center and New York Times say that's not a history of violence. How can that be? This is supposed to be the greatest newspaper in the world and the premier hate group investigation organization. And they're unable to just simply Google the group like I was? It's because it was intentional. The whole piece is designed to make the group seem harsh, but not threatening and menacing like white groups. Now maybe you say, 1990, that was too far back. How about 2011? This is from ABC News. The leader of an alleged cult appeared in court today to answer charges in the deaths of a woman and child found buried in the backyard of a house in Durham. 6 other people who police say are members of the alleged cult were also charged with murder. This person, who's believed to be a leader of the cult called the Black Hebrew Israelites, he was charged with the murders of Antoinetta McCoy, 28, and 5-year-old Jaden Higginbotham. 7 charged in the murder of a 5-year-old woman. But no history of violence, says the Southern Poverty Law Center of the New York Times. Even the Southern Poverty Law Center, from their own website in 2008, warned the group was becoming militant. From the Southern Poverty Law Center. The black supremacist wing of the Hebrew Israelite movement is spreading, and its leaders are growing increasingly militant. So why now say there's no history of violence? What changed? Well, this group now needs to be defended because they attacked white MAGA hat wearing kids. And the narrative those kids are evil racists needs to be kept up by the media. Imagine the outrage if these groups had written this about any white racist group. Oh, the KKK, they don't have a history of violence. They're not as bad. They're just a response to Obama. They're a response to black militant groups. They're not as threatening as the black groups. Imagine the response the New York Times would have got. The media groups like the Southern Poverty Law Center have an agenda. Normalize and support racism from non-whites and destroy white people, even children that don't fall in line. Now, I'm no white identitarian. Oh, hey wife. I have no love for the KKK or the neo-Nazis or whatever, at all. And I'm not someone that just goes around lamenting the poor white people. I don't at all. In fact, I got crap because I said if white people would voluntarily decide to stop reproducing tomorrow, I wouldn't care at all. If it was voluntary. It won't happen. It's a ridiculous hypothetical, obviously. But the point is just, I'm more interested in people that think like me or share my ideals continue to exist after I'm gone than I care that people that look like me continue to exist. The look part's irrelevant. You assume people that share a culture with you will continue to have that culture and those thoughts. But the way you look, your race, is just... It's one example of what might lead to that. It's not the crucial example. So here we have it, right? The New York Times in January writing a puff piece about the black Hebrew Israelites. Oh, they don't have a history of violence. They're not that bad. It's all because of Trump and the white groups are worse. Then some Jews get killed in Jersey, along with a cop. Terrible tragedy. What do people rush to do? Oh, it must be Trump's fault. Oh, it must be white supremacists. No. Sorry, it's the group that the Southern Poverty Law Center and the New York Times was writing a puff piece about because they went after evil, white, MAGA hat wearing kids. It's that group. Weird how the New York Times hasn't come back and updated their story saying they're nonviolent. It's not even the end of it. I go on, and the end of the article lets the cat out of the bag. The New York Times would like to quote a man that says, although the black Hebrew Israelites may be frightening, or as the truth is vile, racist homophobes with a history of murder, they're not as bad as white people in MAGA hats. Quote from the article. To many black people, Hebrew Israelites are a harmless part of their communities, said Todd Boyd, a professor of race and pop culture at the University of Southern California in Los Angeles, one of the many cities where the group can be seen working the streets. More alarming to many African Americans, he said, is, quote, seeing a white guy in a Make America Great Again hat. Do you see what's going on here? You supporting Trump are worse than homophobes, racists, black nationalists who are killing Jews and beheading people. You're worse because you're wearing a MAGA hat. It's unbelievable. Now, you used to say you'd come up with hypotheticals. Man, this idea that, only whites can be racist, this is crap. And one of the hypotheticals maybe you could have came up with, you'd have been laughed about, is like, we could see a day where black adult racists could attack white children and they'll be defended by everyone because white's worse. So even if you're attacking children, it's okay. That's literally what we saw. Oh, hey, what's up? Yeah, JoJo's my brother. Nice to hear from you, man. Now he comes back. Jenny, I'm warning about this in January. I'm like, are you kidding me? Here's a group that's beheaded people. Yelling homophobic and racist things at children. And the New York Times and Southern Poverty Law Center are carrying water for them. They literally, listen. Now you might say, well, okay, this section here where it says, Todd Boyd, this professor of race and pop culture, that's just his opinion. The New York Times included that as the end of their article. They had to let you know, as bad as it is to be homophobic, bigoted, murdering, black nationalist group, that might be bad, but it's not as bad as being a Trump supporter. Keep in mind, what's the context when they're writing this? It was because these blacks were attacking a kid in a MAGA hat. So the New York Times had to virtue signal, look, dear white reader out there, you have to understand, you might feel threatened by a murderous black nationalist group that hates the Jews. It's beheaded people, killed up to 14. And now they've killed Jewish people and a police officer in Jersey. That might be frightening that these people, as the article says, are common sights on street corners all across the country. It might be upsetting to hear them say that you should die for your skin color and things like that. But just know, what's even more upsetting is to be black and see a MAGA hat. Oops, I forgot to submit that article. There it is. I mean, that's nuts. So, yeah, I just want to bring it up. I'm going to try to do this segment at least once a week where I'm like, isn't that weird? Something that I wrote a year ago, relevant today. And they'll act like it's not. One of the things I said, right, I saw, who was it? Maybe Seth Rogen? Though I can't be confident that it was him. It was a comedian. I think it was him, but don't judge him because I don't know for sure. He said, whoever it was, this famous comedian, I saw a tweet where he said, or no, you know who I think it was? It was the guy that does Bender's voice on Futurama. He said, John DiMaggio, I think's his name. He said, look, it used to be a joke. We'd get done with work and we'd go eat our sandwiches on the corner and watch this racist group just yell at people and we just laughed. You want to talk about power? All we hear is, like, literally, the year after Charlottesville, the media went nuts because 15 bigots showed up to the site. 15 white people. Yeah, those people suck, but that's news? 15 people? Meanwhile, you're all admitting, oh yeah, in pretty much most cities in this country, sure, the black nationalists, they're so common, they're on the street corner. Yelling at kids, yelling at gay people, yelling at women, yelling at white people, yelling at Jews. No problem. Imagine if neo-Nazis were set up on every street corner. Would that be okay? No, the media says it's okay to punch those Nazis. Do you see the difference? Hey, Modus, what's happening? Yeah, so David, then the problem is, right, and here's your gut reaction is to defend yourself, right? So if you're told you're evil because you're white, or you're told you're evil because you're a man, or you're evil because you're Christian, or you're evil because you're straight, or you're evil because you're Republican, or you're evil because you were born in this country, or you're evil because you're rich, that's what cultural Marxism is. This is an example of cultural Marxism. We break everyone up into groups. I'm not Rob Noor. I am a series of categories. I'm white, that means I'm an oppressor. I'm male, that means I'm an oppressor. I'm straight, that means I'm an oppressor. Fat guy, that's oppressed. You thin folks oppressing me as a fat guy. Right? That's what it is. And then you just identify as whatever part of you is a victim and you consolidate with all the other victims and that's the idea. That's cultural Marxism. That's intersectionality. Right. Like, and it is, right? Like, there are threats of genocide. And the groups that like what the Democrats are doing the most, you know the two groups that like it the most? White racists and people of colors that are racist. I saw an interview with Richard Spencer, who's like, you know, the guy they say is a Nazi. Now listen, let me be fully honest here. I don't know a lot about Richard Spencer, and I hate to just smear him because I know he's an easy target. But he does, I think I'm correct in saying he's unequivocal that he wants a white-only country. As far as I'm concerned, that's racist and bigoted, and I couldn't disagree with him more. I don't like the guy based on just that belief. But I will say I haven't watched tons of his material because I'm not interested. I'm not a white identitarian. So I'm not interested. So he, though, right, Richard Spencer, he's the one he got punched and they were like, is it okay to punch a Nazi and all this crap, right? But I did see this interview with him where he said the biggest recruitment that he has is Black Lives Matter. When racial identitarians of a different group start to get bigger, then that means the opposing group's racial identitarians will get bigger. Jordan Peterson talks about this a lot. When you play identity politics and you keep using that as a cudgel, eventually people that share other identities are going to play the same game. And they're not going to play just to play. They're going to play to win. And it will be an unending cycle. So that's why I get the gut reaction to be like, well, now I care because I'm white. I certainly will defend anyone who's being attacked for their skin color, regardless if they be white or another color. And certainly, I'm not talking about street level violence. Certainly, when it comes to the cultural institutions of power, they're all on the progressive scale. It's controlled by the progressives. And it's in vogue to attack people for being white, for being Christian. And so I end up defending those groups more often. But if I was in a different time, if I grew up in the civil rights time, I'll guarantee I would have been defending the blacks that were being treated, told they couldn't eat at restaurants and things like that. And yes, that is more severe than we currently see happening to white people. Don't be mistaken about that. Well, Modus, being a nationalist is fine. I'm a nationalist. If you're a nationalist and thinks only people of a certain race should be allowed here, that's a problem. But it's fine to be a nationalist. So yeah, I do defend, I think it's ridiculous when people are attacked for their skin color. I think it's ridiculous that Bernie had to say, oh, I'm a white man, I apologize for being a white man. It's ridiculous, and I'll make fun of that. And I'll point out, and it could be quite serious. We see Trump supporters being physically beaten. And it's brushed aside. To me, right, the power of racism, the power of a hatred is this, right? This is why when people say they're like Antifa, oh, Antifa's not as bad as right-wing radicalism. Well, the problem is how you define the terms. For example, right-wing nationalism, they consider prison crimes with like a white group, a white racist group that does something in prison, they'll consider that right-wing violence. But if a black group does it, they don't consider that left-wing violence. Right? And all sorts of things. So how you define that sort of stuff, at least the one study I read, that was the case. How you define this stuff is important. But the reason I say Antifa is a bigger danger is because no one of power, no one with any credibility whatsoever defends the KKK. No one defends neo-Nazis. No one. Right? It just doesn't happen. Like I said in what I just wrote there. You're all but... If you have any connection to any of those groups, your public life's done. It's that simple. They don't have power. Every group, entertainment industry, the media, politicians, Silicon Valley, academia, just the average person, they're not going to tolerate you saying, oh, I'm a member of the KKK. You're ostracized. Look at the Charlottesville people. No one liked that, right? But with Antifa, with these other groups, there are people in positions of power to defend. Professors in academia, Silicon Valley. Go, just look. You could have, to this day, how long did it take them to bring down, Antifa sites on Facebook or on Twitter? Meanwhile, if you just say men are men and women are women, you get booted off Twitter. The media. See anyone in the media defending the KKK? No, but they certainly were with Antifa. Remember? It's in the name. Remember Dom Lemon telling you? Anti-fascist. Oh, you're right, John. Yeah, of course CNN will use someone like Richard Spencer when it could smear Trump. Never forget, David Duke came out and endorsed Ilhan Omar. Now, when David Duke endorsed Trump, they were like, oh! But Duke's like, yeah, I don't like Jews. Neither's Omar. Yeah. Or maybe it wasn't Omar. Maybe it was Tlaib. But you get the point. So, that's what makes these groups dangerous, when you can't criticize them, right? When you can see the truth and you're not allowed to say it. That's where the danger is. And mark my words, eventually the tide will shift, right? Eventually Antifa will do something so heinous and someone will be killed that it's impossible to defend, like a baby or something. They could kill. Steve Scalise could get shot. Granted, that wasn't Antifa. It was just a Bernie supporter. But he can get shot and they can turn the other, right? They could use mental gymnastics. But eventually something will happen that the public outcry will be so significant that then the media will have to turn on their baby. And academia will as well. All these groups will have to say, oh, okay, we disassociate. That's when you'll see real violence from Antifa. Because what the violence is a symptom of is you think that you have no other way to have the levers of power. Or to, right? So if you're Antifa, you have tremendous power. You have politicians that are backing you both publicly and in secret. You basically have sympathetic people all through academia that are shaping the future leaders of the world. You have the media that was defending you to a large extent. You have Silicon Valley that defends you to a large extent. So there's no need to exclusively use power. But once those groups go away, mark my words, you'll start to see the violence go through the roof. Because all of a sudden, they're going to realize we don't have power anymore. Yeah, David, you're exactly right. That's what cultural Marxism is. That's what identity politics is. That's what I was saying earlier. The Republicans should be the party of Martin Luther King. We don't care at all about your skin color. We don't care about your gender. We don't care about your sexual preference as long as it's consenting adults. We don't care about your religion. We care about you, the content of your character. That's it. We're not going to have special laws because of your skin color or your gender or your sexual preferences. We're not going to do it. We're going to treat everyone the same. The Democrats could be the party of, we all need to be divided 1,000 ways. Divided based on skin color. Divided based on gender. Divided based on sexual preference. Divided based on whether or not you're trans. Divided based on your religion. Divided based on your wealth. That could be the Democrats. Yeah, it is. It's a Hegelian dialectic. Right? Go look at Andrew Breitbart when he was alive. He did this for his book. I forget the show he was on, but it's like an hour review of his book. You can find the clip on YouTube where he talks about cultural Marxism, right? And he's just spot on. Well, John, here's the deal with religion, right? Like, I would call myself a Christian, though loosely. I don't really do a lot of organized religion. I believe in being Christ-like. I have some friends that I've only personally really known a couple of Muslims. One of them, I can honestly tell you, is one of the greatest people I've ever met. I know people that are non-Christian that are awesome people that are just like agnostic or atheist. I've known some Jewish people that are like, so you can interpret your religion in a crappy way. What you worship at home is of no consequence to me. I don't care at all. How you manifest that in our day-to-day life and the interactions of people could be a problem. That's the problem with Islam. It's political Islam. It's that it's more than just a religion. It's an entire set of laws, right? Like, yeah, and I'm with you there, John, 100%. But you have to understand, a lot of Muslims that immigrated here legally are escaping that radicalism. They still believe in the core tenets, right? But they don't express themselves like these countries they're fleeing from, Iran or Syria, right? Ironically, what you end up seeing then is a lot of second-generation people that commit the terrorism in the United States. You know, I tell this story all the time. There was this terrorist in New York City 4 or 5 years ago, maybe, Islamic terrorist, and it was weird. He set up this bomb somewhere where there was a camera, so you could see the bomb go off, and luckily it didn't kill anyone. And so they were looking for this guy, and they found him. And he was second-generation Islamic terrorist. And a bunch of people boycotted his dad's restaurant. His dad had a chicken restaurant in New York City. And it's one of the saddest stories ever because it turns out the dad is the one who called the FBI, both before and after the bombing. He called before to say, I think there's a problem with my son. Because he's someone who fled Islamic extremism, and he saw that growing in his son, and he didn't like it. Now, how many of us could call the FBI on our son? Probably not many. Yet he was boycotted just because he was related to the guy and happened to be Muslim. That was wrong to me. So, anyways, but kind of enough talk of like the religious stuff. To me, it's like this idea of, Breitbart talks about cultural Marxism, and basically the skinny of it is you had all these Marxists in academia like in the 40s, 50s, 60s. There was a big movement in the West and in the United States where you had all these people in academia that were arguing for the West versus for communism, Marxism versus capitalism, and it's going and going and going and going. And then basically we started to peer into what was occurring in the Soviet Union, and we started to see like Solzhenitsyn, right, the Gulag Archipelago, and you started to see the horrors, and you saw like, wow, Stalin killed what? 10 to 25 million of his own people, starved them to death. Not other people, right? When people will say, oh, well, the United States and Vietnam. Yeah, that's bad, don't get me wrong, killing but you're killing your own people. The system that they've initiated is killing themselves. Mao, upwards of 50 million people. So these facts started coming out, and the academics couldn't defend it anymore. And so they switched, and Breitbart talks about, he's like, look, all of these like postmodernists, like Marcuse and all these people, they come over, and they centered in San Francisco. And Breitbart says, they looked out their window every day, and they saw middle-class kids having fun, going to the beach, surfing, having a great life. And they hated it. They despised the middle class. So they needed to drive a wedge into us. And there are the beginning roots of cultural Marxism. They tried to do it with communism, with Marxism. They tried to do it with wealth. But they realized, why stop at wealth? Why not gender? Why not sexual preference? Why not skin color? Why not religion? Right? Yeah, I hear you, Milo. Next year, if I'm lucky. That's only a couple days away. But yeah, I will. My wife is here, so I'm going to have to leave soon. But that's what's going on there. I mean, it's crazy. They're trying to divide. So I just wanted to show you something I wrote from back in January to show, right? That's how insane this cultural Marxism is. They were literally defending radical black nationalists who we now know have gone on to kill people in Jersey just here last week. The New York Times and the Southern Poverty Law Center were defending them as, well, they're kind of bad, but they're not as bad as Trump supporters. Now, that should be being waved in the Southern Poverty Law Center and New York Times face today. But it won't be. So, all right. So, yeah, I'm going to be heading out here. I had a couple other things to talk about, but I'm not going to get to it. Like J.K. Rowling being canceled, or the OK symbol at the Army-Navy game ending up not being racist, right? Who would have thought? But yeah, I'm going to head out here. I just wanted to, again, give a shout out to Milo and my buddy Dib, who's not on here, for supporting me on Patreon. If you go to my regular non-live stream videos, they'll all now have links to my Patreon, PayPal if you don't prefer that, and then also links to my Twitter and BitChute. I don't know, it sounds like grousing. Yeah, Merry Christmas, JoJo. We'll talk to you soon. It sounds like grousing, but I feel like YouTube doesn't promote my content. I'm sure it's true, but I'm trying not to sit here and just complain. So, yeah, if you could follow me on those other platforms, that'd be great. I'm still trying to get to 100 subscribers so I could do some mobile live streaming. I'm still going exactly through. If you do donate financially to me, one, don't feel the need to. If you do, I'd be really grateful. If not, that's totally fine. Take it easy, Modus. Thanks. Thank you, Pacey. Appreciate it. But if you do donate, I am going to try to be very transparent in exactly what I'm doing. I have decided not to get a green screen, and so I'm going to just get other backgrounds. But there's all sorts of things I could do with editing, with not maybe having to work 80 hours a week, with promoting my channel and things like that. So if you would consider donating, I hate asking, though. I feel like a scrub. But my wife's yelling, don't do it. Yeah, right. If I got donated enough, you would be done working immediately. Okay. Yeah. You could donate to me, and then my wife could work less hours at the bank. So, but no, seriously, thank you, everyone. I'll be putting more stuff out as the week goes on. I'm going to try to be averaging at least one regular video a day. I'm going to do every Monday night. I'm going to try, unless I'm sick or something comes up, at 11 p.m. Eastern time. I'm going to do a late night live stream, and then I'm going to try to do a live stream every Thursday and every Saturday as well. So thank you so much, everyone, and have a good one.